Welcome to this space of stillness, a sanctuary where every story becomes a mirror, reflecting your inner world, and every breath is a gentle step back toward peace. Tonight, amidst the soft echoes of memory, you're invited to walk into a deeply personal journey, the journey of looking into the pain of cutting someone out of your life. None of us escape this. Everyone has loved deeply only to learn how to let go. Some separations are not born from anger, but from exhaustion. Sometimes we leave not because love has ended, but because peace has. And within those silences between love and loss, the greatest question of human life emerges. What truly happens when we cut someone out of our lives? The Buddha taught that all suffering arises from attachment. We do not suffer because someone has left. We suffer because we cannot accept that everything changes. A heart that cannot let go is like a boat stuck between two shores, unable to stay, yet unable to move on. We think we've cut the cord, but the thread still binds us inside. Even when we delete their name or photo, their image quietly lives on in memory. Because the true bondage is not outside, but within. The Buddha once said, "No one can hurt you unless your mind still clings to their image." If cutting off still comes with anger or blame, then you haven't really let go. Only when we leave with love and gratitude, without resentment, without expectation, does the karmic bond between two hearts truly dissolve. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means understanding so deeply that holding on is no longer necessary. Through the Zen stories that follow, you'll see that sometimes what we call loss is really the beginning of a higher form of love, a love without demand, without possession, made only of understanding and peace. These stories are not just to help you understand, but to calm your heart, so that tonight you may fall into deeper, lighter sleep, like a lake that grows still when the wind stops blowing. And now, as the mind begins to quiet, let us step into the first part of this journey. Love and suffering. There is no pain greater than attachment, and no freedom deeper than release. Because when we love, we want to hold on, and that very holding keeps the heart from resting. There is a paradox in love that nearly everyone has tasted. The more we love, the more we suffer. The more we try to hold, the more we fear losing. The tighter we cling, the faster happiness slips away. Love, the most beautiful feeling in life, can also become the heaviest weight on the heart. One day, a disciple asked his Zen master, "Master, why does love hurt? If love makes people better, why does it also break their hearts?" The master smiled, not because the question was new, but because it has lived in the human heart for thousands of years. From poems and songs to prayers, humanity has always searched for the same answer. Why does the very thing that brings the greatest joy also cause the deepest pain? Love is like a river. When water flows naturally, it is clear and gentle. But if we try to stop or contain it, the water becomes muddy swells and breaks its banks. Because the nature of love is flow, not possession. Long ago, at the foot of a misty mountain, there stood a small temple hidden among maple trees. There lived a young novice named Rin, kind, diligent, and sincere in his practice. Every morning, Rin went to the village to receive alms. Among the villagers was a young woman named Hana, her smile bright as early summer sunlight, her eyes soft, her hands always placing the rice bowl before him with quiet grace. At first, Rin thought it was merely a moment of kindness between two souls. But morning after morning, as the soft wind carried her smile, something began to stir in him. He found himself waiting his usual peace, replaced by longing. When Hana did not appear one morning, a strange emptiness filled his chest. And one autumn evening, as the temple bell echoed through the bamboo grove, Rin realized the one thing a monk fears most. He had fallen in love. Unable to calm his heart, Rin went to the abbot. Kneeling, his voice trembled. "Master, my mind is no longer at peace. I love someone. I don't want to lose her yet, to keep her feels against my vows. What should I do?" The master said nothing. He simply smiled and led Rin into the garden. The maple leaves were burning red in the evening light, falling slowly like smoke. The master plucked a single leaf, placed it in Rin's hand, and said, "Hold this leaf in your palm, but do not tear it." Rin held it gently. After a while, his palm grew hot and damp, and the leaf began to wither and darken. The master softly said, "Now open your hand." Rin opened his palm. A breeze passed, and the leaf floated away, turning gently before touching the ground. The master watched and said quietly, "You see, when you grasp it, withers. When you release it, flies." Tears filled Rin's eyes. That night, he sat beneath the moonlight and wrote Hana a single-line letter. "Thank you for teaching me that to love does not mean to hold." The next morning, Rin left the temple to study elsewhere. Years passed. When autumn returned, Rin, now a Zen master, was sweeping fallen leaves in the temple courtyard. A red maple leaf drifted down before him, exactly like the one from long ago. He stopped, looked at it, and smiled. Not the smile of longing, but the smile of understanding, because true love is not to hold, so we may have, but to let go, so both may be free. Once he saw this truth, Rin no longer felt loss, only a bright stillness, like the final leaf falling, while the wind keeps smiling. Love turns into suffering only when it becomes attachment. When we demand love to be returned, when we expect someone never to change, we go against the law of impermanence. The Buddha taught all that is born will also die. Nothing lasts forever. Love, no matter how deep, is not outside that law. If we understand this, we can love like Rin, grateful for the one who awakened our heart, but without turning that feeling into chains. Modern people often say, love is giving. But in truth, much of what we call giving hides expectation. We offer a flower, but secretly hope it will be kept forever. We say, "I love you," but often mean, "I want you to belong to me." What hurts us is not love itself, but the illusion of its permanence. Like the one holding the leaf, the tighter the grip, the faster it dies. Zen teaches another way, love in freedom. To love without owning. To love while letting the other follow their own path. To love and still remain peaceful within. In modern psychology, this is called mature love, where two people do not try to fill each other's emptiness, but simply walk together for a time, then part gently when the moment comes. From a Buddhist view, loving in awareness is the highest form of compassion, for it contains wisdom, understanding, and the ability to see impermanence clearly. Such love is not cold detachment, but deep gratitude, allowing everything to return to where it belongs. When we can love someone and still keep our inner freedom, love transforms into compassion. A study from Stanford University once showed that when people practice mindful love, the brain regions linked to anxiety quiet down. We fear less, envy less, and forgive more easily. In other words, when love is rooted in awareness, both body and mind begin to heal. In daily life, we can practice this through 3 small steps. 1. When you fear losing someone, breathe slowly and ask yourself, am I loving them or am I afraid to lose them? 2. When you feel the urge to control, observe that feeling as if standing by a river watching the current flow. Don't interfere, just notice. 3. When love ends, don't try to forget. Instead, silently thank that person for showing you the part of yourself still in need of healing. When we learn to let go, even sleep becomes lighter. Many sleepless nights arise not from fatigue, but from unrest in the heart, from holding on to someone who has already left. If tonight you sit quietly for a few minutes, place your hand over your heart and say, I don't need anyone to stay for me to be at peace. Then inhale. Exhale deeply. You may feel the pain soften, like a river clearing after the rain. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means seeing things as they truly are, arising, fading, coming, going, all just part of the flow. And when you finally understand that peace begins to settle, peace doesn't mean the absence of loneliness, because deep down, we all still long for connection. A glance, a kind word, a shared breath. The next journey tells of 2 souls who once soared together like wings of the same bird until life's winds changed direction. Their farewell came in silence, without anger, only tired hearts and gentle endings. Sometimes only in losing each other do we finally learn what it means to love with awareness. Have you ever noticed that the quietest goodbyes often leave the deepest echoes? No tears, no blame, not even a farewell embrace, only silence. A silence so vast it seems to drown out all the noise of life. Many believe that when love ends, everything is lost. But love doesn't disappear. It merely changes form into memory, into a soft breath in the heart, like the lingering sound of a bell, long after it stopped ringing. Long ago, at the foot of a misty mountain, there was a peaceful little village by a clear stream. In that village lived a young couple whose lives were simple but full of joy. They built a small home by the water, grew vegetables, raised chickens, and spent quiet mornings on the porch, smiling at the first light of day. To the villagers, they were the image of perfect love, calm and kind, like the stream flowing around their home. But as with all waters, time quietly moved on. Their love didn't fade because of tragedy, but because of small, almost invisible changes. The eyes that no longer met the silences, that no longer felt peaceful. The evenings spent together, but with hearts drifting to different places. The husband still worked hard, but spoke less. The wife remained gentle, yet inside her grew an unnamed emptiness. One autumn afternoon, under clear skies and soft wind, the wife sat by the stream, tears falling without reason. Her husband came and sat beside her. They both watched the slow-moving water in silence. Finally, she whispered, her voice trembling like a falling leaf. "We've walked a long road together, but it seems the paths in our hearts have now parted." The husband said nothing. He picked up a golden leaf drifting by and placed it on the water. The leaf spun, gently carried by the current, until it vanished around the bend. "Perhaps our love is like this leaf," he said softly. "Not lost, just flowing to another place." There was no anger, no crying, only the quiet weariness of two souls who had learned that some forms of love are not meant to be held on to. They parted peacefully, each carrying a fragment of the other's calm. Years later, the husband became a Zen master living in a small temple near the same stream. One afternoon, someone asked him, "Master, do you ever miss her?" The master smiled, poured tea, and watched the thin steam rise in the fading sunlight. "Yes," he said, "but not to hold on to be grateful. For she taught me something no one else could, that love doesn't need to stay to continue existing." He then shared an old memory. When they were together, they had hung a wind chime at their porch. After the separation, she took it with her. A year later, during a pilgrimage through a distant village, the master suddenly heard that same chime ringing in the evening breeze. The familiar sound made him stop, but instead of pain, he smiled. He understood love is like that chime. When the wind changes, the sound still echoes in the heart that knows how to listen. No need to keep it, no need to forget. Just smile at the echo of the past, for within it lives the light of gratitude and freedom. The master's story was not about separation, but about the flow of love and impermanence. In Buddhism, everything arises through conditions. When conditions come together, we meet. When they fade, we part. Only when we try to grasp what is meant to flow do we suffer. Someone once asked, "If love requires no attachment, does it still have meaning?" The master replied, "Only without attachment does love return to its pure essence." Love is not a binding rope, it is an energy that helps us grow. Everyone who passes through our lives is a lesson in how to love, how to understand, and how to let go. If we love only by holding on, love becomes a burden. But if we love in freedom, love becomes wisdom. Letting go of someone does not mean we stop loving them. It means we've learned to place that love where it can rest in peace, like an artist who puts down the brush to admire the finished painting. In modern psychology, this is called emotional closure. A healthy ending. When a relationship ends and the heart still feels heavy, it means it hasn't truly closed. But if we look back with gratitude, without blame, without anger, we complete the circle of love. The Buddha taught, "When you love with understanding." Without understanding, love turns into attachment. In life, many cannot let go after parting, not because they still love, but because they still do not understand. They have not realized that the one who left is simply following their own karmic path. A study from Harvard University found that those who can let go after a breakup are 30% happier than those who continue to hold on to resentment. Their brains function differently. Areas tied to painful memories become quieter, while regions linked to positive emotions grow more active. This shows that letting go doesn't erase love. It releases the energy trapped within. So if one day your heart feels heavy because of someone who's gone, try looking back with peace. Remember, love never truly ends. It only changes its expression. The person may no longer be beside you, but the lesson they left still lives within, like a wind chime still ringing softly in the open air. Each night before sleep, place your hand over your heart and listen. If someone's memory still causes pain, don't push it away. Whisper softly, "I am grateful for you and I set you free." Then take a deep breath. As you exhale, imagine that breath carrying away all the threads still binding your heart. You'll find sleep comes easier because the mind no longer struggles between memory and the present moment. Remember, letting go isn't erasing the past, it's restoring everything to its rightful place. Memories belong to the past while peace lives in the present. The Zen master once said, "Those who cannot sleep are often those who have not yet let go." And so when you learn to release in love, you also learn to rest in peace. Every farewell, when seen through wisdom, becomes a step toward awakening. When you no longer try to erase someone from your life, but instead hold them in gratitude, you take one step closer to true freedom. And yet there is something curious even after letting go. Sometimes we still hear a faint echo inside a tender vibration of love, no longer painful, but still warm. The next part of this journey speaks of the echo of love, where memories do not vanish, but turn into mirrors for the soul, helping us understand ourselves more deeply. Have you ever wondered if love can still exist even after someone has left? That, in the long silence after a breakup, something is still quietly resonating like the sound of a bell that continues to ring after the striking has stopped. People often believe that when a relationship ends, love ends with it. But strangely, the more we try to forget, the more we remember. The more we try to extinguish it, the more that flame flickers back to life. Because love doesn't truly disappear, it just changes form from a concrete presence into a quiet kind of energy inside the heart. Long ago, on the slope of a mist-covered mountain, there was a small, peaceful village. In that village lived a wind chime maker known for his craft. The chimes he made produced clear tones that lingered long after the wind had died down. People often asked him for his secret. He would just smile and reply softly, "A wind chime only rings for a long time when the one who made it has poured their whole heart into it." One day, a young woman came to buy a chime. Her smile made him forget the hammer and anvil in his workshop. She chose the chime he loved most and said she would hang it on her porch so that every time the wind blew, she would remember the one who created that sound. Love grew between them naturally, no promises, no bindings, only the peace of two souls simply being present in the same moment. Then time passed, like winds changing direction. The young woman left the village with her family for a faraway land. On the day he saw her off, a light rain was falling. The artisan stood under the eaves, silently watching her figure fade, letting the wind chime sway in the cold wind. Its sound both beautiful and aching. Years went by. He still made chimes, still listened to the wind on his porch, but in every ringing tone he saw the image of that young woman. Someone asked him, "Why don't you make a different kind of chime so you can forget the old memories?" He simply smiled. Once a sound has rung into the heart, you cannot erase it with another sound. You can only learn to listen to it with a more peaceful heart. That autumn, a strong gust of wind knocked down all the chimes hanging in front of his house. He picked them up one by one, cleaned them, and hung them back up. When he reached the last one, the chime the young woman had chosen, he tapped it gently. The sound that rang out was no longer as clear as before, but deeper, warmer, and fuller. He smiled and whispered, "A chime like a person does not disappear. As it passes through time, it simply grows deeper." That night, he left the village. The little house was empty, with only the chimes swaying in the wind. People said that whenever the wind blew over the mountainside, you could still hear that sound echoing, not sad, not joyful, like a greeting from the past sent to the present. And anyone who listened carefully would hear in that chime the sound of a heart that had learned to love, to let go, and to smile at impermanence. The story of the wind chime maker is not just a beautiful memory, it is also a deep Buddhist metaphor about impermanence and the mind. Love is one of the hardest lessons in human life because it touches both extremes, the deepest joy and the deepest pain. When we love, the heart opens. When we lose, the heart closes. But in Zen, there is no opening or closing. There is only awareness. The chime in this story is a symbol of memory of a love that has passed. It continues to ring because the human heart continues to listen. Like sound particles in space, it does not vanish. It only changes frequency, only changes in how we perceive it. According to the Buddha's teachings, all emotions arise from conditions. They come, stay for a while, and then fade. If we resist them, they grow stronger. If we recognize them, they become transparent. When we listen to that echo with a clear mind, love is no longer an obsession, but becomes a teacher showing us gratitude and acceptance. Zen masters often say, true love is not about holding on, but about seeing its continuation in every form. The other person may have gone, but the seed of love continues to sprout in how we look at others, in the gentleness we offer the world, in the compassion we learn from our own loss. In modern life, people often try to erase the past by speeding up. We throw ourselves into work, new relationships, constant trips, but no one truly escapes the inner echo. It returns in many forms, a dream, a song, a familiar scent. So instead of avoiding it, learn to listen. Whenever longing arises, see it not as weakness, but as a chance to understand the true nature of love more deeply. In modern psychology, emotional memories are never erased, only reconstructed. That means we cannot truly forget someone who has passed through our life, but we can change the emotional tone tied to them. When we look back with gratitude, the brain reorganizes the memory in a healthier way. Less pain, more clarity. The Buddha taught it is not love that makes us suffer, but our attachment to its old form. True love, when it has gone through suffering, becomes compassion. Compassion is love without limits, without conditions. It is when we can look at someone from the past and feel no more turbulence, only a quiet, wordless kindness. Imagine if in this life we could look at everyone who ever hurt us with eyes of gratitude. In that moment, we would have touched a higher level of inner freedom. And then when the mind has settled, when we can hear the echo of love without pain, another door opens. That is when we begin to see the deeper lesson behind our suffering, because simply cutting someone off does not help us grow if we have not yet understood why we hurt. Pain itself is the teacher, and only when we listen to it with compassion do we begin to see the truth hidden beneath separation. That will be the next story, where pain is no longer an enemy, but becomes the path that leads us back to our true self. Some people believe that once they firmly cut someone out of their life, it's over, that they're strong, wise, and free. But then, one evening, sitting alone in the quiet, they suddenly feel a sharp ache in their chest, even though no one is hurting them anymore. Why does that happen? Because cutting someone off doesn't make us grow if we still don't understand why we hurt. In Buddhism, pain is not the enemy. It is the teacher, showing us how to look deeply within. But people often run away from it, like someone afraid of a mirror, because it reflects the things they don't want to see. Long ago, in a small temple deep within a bamboo forest, there lived a novice monk named Riku. He had a gentle heart, and his kindness was poured into a little bird he once rescued with a broken wing. Every morning, Riku fed. It talked to it and taught it to fly again. The bird's song and Riku's laughter blended into the purest sound in the forest. One morning, as the first sunlight filtered through the bamboo leaves, the bird suddenly took flight. Riku ran after it, calling out, but it never returned. He sat there in silence, clutching a single feather it had left behind, tears falling, without knowing exactly why the pain was so deep. That afternoon, the abbot walked by and saw Riku still sitting by the pond. He asked, "Are you crying because the bird is gone?" Riku nodded, his voice trembling. "I loved it so much. I'm afraid it will forget me." The Zen master looked toward the horizon, where the sunset painted the forest red, and said softly, "The bird hasn't forgotten you. It's only doing what birds must do, fly." He picked up a small stone and tossed it into the pond. Ripples spread outward, then slowly faded into stillness. You see, the stone has fallen, but the ripples take time to fade. Your sadness is the same. When you cling to what has already gone, you keep stirring the water within and prevent it from becoming calm again. That night, Riku couldn't sleep. He remembered every moment with the bird, the golden mornings, its bright songs echoing in the trees. But amid his sadness, something began to change. His heart started to warm, as if the love still remained, only in a different form. The next morning, Riku went to the pond. The water was still like glass. He placed the feather on the surface and whispered, "Thank you for being with me. Fly free." From a distance, the Zen master smiled quietly. He knew that Riku had just learned the first lesson of a true practitioner to love without clinging, to care without binding. Because understanding pain, not escaping it, is the path to freedom. Riku's story may seem to be only about a little monk and a small bird, but in truth, it mirrors every separation in life. We've all been Riku, holding tightly to something that no longer belongs to us. And we've all felt that same pain, thinking that letting go means losing. But the Buddha taught all things born of conditions will also end by conditions. Pain does not come on its own, nor does it stay forever. It is the result of attachment. When attachment ceases, suffering cannot remain. After a breakup, Many people try to erase all traces of the other person, just as Riku tried to erase the image of the bird. But they forget that erasing what's outside never heals what's inside. Because the root of suffering doesn't lie in others. It lies in our mind, in the refusal to accept what is. There is a deep teaching in Zen. You do not suffer because you lost something. You suffer because you do not accept that it is gone. That is the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is natural. Suffering is pain prolonged, fed by resistance. A Zen master once said, "Pain is the raindrop, but suffering is the storm created by your own mind." Therefore, the way to heal is not to forget, but to face your pain with compassion. When you can sit with it without running away, without judging, you will see that behind the pain lies deeper understanding of yourself, of others, and of impermanence. When you lose a relationship, the first thing the mind does is deny it. Then it starts creating stories to justify if they had been different, if I had done better. But the more the mind tries to explain, the deeper the pain grows, because it is still looking for answers outside. Modern psychology teaches that true healing happens only when we accept our emotions without trying to fix them. The brain then activates the region responsible for acceptance, calming the reactive part and allowing both body and mind to regain balance. This is very close to Buddhist teaching mindfulness of emotion, seeing pain without becoming it. When you can observe your sadness as you would a cloud passing through the sky, you are no longer that sadness, and then something beautiful happens. Pain turns into understanding. Understanding turns into compassion, and compassion turns into peace. Just like Riku when he stopped blaming himself, stopped searching for the bird, and simply said, "Thank you," and let it fly. In that moment, his heart was free. In life, some wounds do not need to close too soon. Let them heal naturally, like flowers opening slowly in the morning sun. Don't rush to be okay. True peace never comes from force. Each time your heart tightens from missing someone, try this meditation. Sit quietly and take a deep breath. As you exhale, whisper, "This is the pain within me." Don't push it away. Don't try to change it. Just watch. Observe the feeling as you would watch a cloud drifting across the sky. If tears fall, let them. Every tear is old energy being released, and when you lie down to sleep, place your hand over your heart and smile softly. Say, "I made it through another day, and I'm grateful that I can still love." You will sleep more deeply because the mind is no longer resisting. One who can sleep in peace has understood letting go is not forgetting, it is ceasing to fight what has already passed. And as you begin to understand your own pain, something extraordinary happens. Compassion within you grows. You no longer resent the one who left, nor do you blame yourself. You begin to see pain not as an enemy, but as a teacher, the one who leads you back to your original unbroken heart. Because when we cut someone off, we think we are controlling pain, but in truth, we are only running from it. The river does not remove the stone. It simply learns to flow around it. And that river is your heart learning little by little to flow through everything, returning at last to the vast ocean of freedom. the days when the heart is still full of pain, many people turn to cutting someone off as a form of liberation. They delete contacts, block messages, erase photos, believing that this means they have taken control of their pain. But in truth, that is not control. It is the mind's subtle way of running away. Removing someone from your life does not bring peace to the heart, nor does it make longing disappear. It only helps you forget temporarily, until one day you hear a familiar song walk down an old street, or glimpse a familiar figure passing by. And suddenly the waves inside rise again, like a river. Whether it wants to or not, it must flow past the stones within it. The river cannot remove the stones. It can only learn to flow around them gently, steadily, without stopping. One early morning, when dew still clung to the bamboo leaves, the temple bell rang across the still sky. While sweeping fallen leaves, a Zen master was approached by a young woman whose face carried quiet sorrow. "Master," she said softly, "I've tried to forget someone. I cut off all contact, deleted everything about them, yet I still dream of them every night. Does that mean I'm not strong enough?" The Zen master was silent. He looked into a basin of rainwater where the sky trembled in reflection. "You are trying to forget," he said, "but in truth you are remembering." She frowned. "But if I don't stop, I'll always be in pain." The master pointed toward the lotus pond. "See, the pond does not resist the rain, nor does it try to keep it. When the wind rises, the water ripples. When the wind stops, it clears again. Control is not about fighting. It's about allowing things to settle on their own." The woman bowed her head. In the reflection of the morning light on the water, she suddenly understood perhaps she hadn't really let go. She had only been holding on to the illusion that she could control her feelings. Then the Zen master told her an old story. Once there was a monk named Enso, known for his strict discipline. He believed that if a person had enough willpower, they could completely control their emotions. Each day, he meditated for hours, keeping his mind utterly still. One day, while sweeping the temple yard, Enso saw a young woman carrying a wounded bird. She asked for his help. For many days, Enso cared for the bird, feeding it, tending its wound, sheltering it from the rain. But gradually, he felt something unfamiliar: tenderness, worry, fear of loss. When the bird healed, the woman opened the cage and released it. Enso stood silently watching it fly away, and from that day, he could no longer concentrate in meditation. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of the bird returned. Angry at himself, he said, "I have let my heart be disturbed. I must destroy this feeling." He went deep into the forest, found a cave, and meditated in darkness, determined to extinguish all emotion. Days passed. He lived on roots and stream water. One night, he heard a bird singing outside and grew furious. "Why are you still here?" "In my mind," he shouted, throwing a stone into the dark. But then he froze. What he heard next wasn't the bird. It was his own echo. In that instant, Enso awakened. It wasn't the bird that stirred his mind. It was his own attachment that created the bird inside. The next morning, he stepped out of the cave. Before him, the stream flowed peacefully, curving around stones, without resistance. Enso smiled, and from that moment, he stopped trying to destroy emotion. He simply observed it, as water flows around pebbles. And in that, his mind became truly still. The story of Enso is a profound lesson about the illusion of control. We often think we can force ourselves to forget, force ourselves to be strong, force sorrow to disappear. But the more we force, the more we suffer. In Buddhism, every emotion is a guest arriving and leaving according to causes and conditions. There is no need to chase them away and no need to cling to them. When we try to control, we go against the natural flow of the mind, and it only becomes more tangled. Control is an illusion because we cannot control impermanence. It is like trying to hold water in your hand. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips away. The Buddha taught no one can hold a river in their palm. Only by opening the hand can one truly see it flow. What we call control is really a subtle form of attachment. We fear our emotions, so we label them as bad. We dislike missing someone, so we call it weakness. But in Zen understanding is letting go. When we see that emotions are like waves, we no longer need to flatten the ocean. We simply let the waves settle on their own. The more we practice, the clearer. We see the mind doesn't need to be controlled, it only needs to be seen. And once we see clearly, everything naturally returns to its place, just as the river knows how to flow around the stones. In life, many people suffer because they believe they can control everything: emotions, other people, the future, even fate itself. But the Dharma teaches that everything belongs to causes and conditions, not to personal will. When someone leaves, we think we can decide how much it will hurt. But pain doesn't obey. It comes, fades, and returns, like waves upon the shore. The more we resist, the stronger the waves become. But when we sit still, observing without judgment, the waves begin to calm. Modern psychology agrees the more people try to suppress negative emotions, the more their brain activates stress centers, intensifying anxiety. But when they simply acknowledge emotions without reacting, the nervous system relaxes, restoring balance to body and mind. This aligns perfectly with the Buddha's words. When the mind does not resist, suffering cannot remain. So when you find yourself trying to control, pause and ask, am I truly in control, or am I afraid? If it's fear, breathe. If it's fear, listen. Because fear dissolves only in the light of awareness. Freedom does not come from controlling life. It comes from no longer letting life control you through your emotions. When night falls before sleep, try sitting quietly for a few minutes. Instead of thinking, how can I stop remembering? Breathe softly and whisper, I am remembering, and that's okay. I am sad, and that's okay too. Imagine your sadness as a wave. Don't try to push it away. Let it touch the shore of your heart, then fade into stillness. Do this each night, and your mind will soften. Sleep will come naturally, not because you forced it, but because you've stopped fighting yourself. When the mind is calm, sleep is deep. When there is nothing left to control, the body rests. That sleep is not just rest for the body, it is meditation for the heart, where all pain pauses within mindful breathing. Many people think letting go means erasing, but true letting go is acceptance. If you cut someone off in anger, you are not free, you're simply tightening the rope once more. Anger is the final thread that still binds you to them. Only through understanding and forgiveness for others and for yourself do you truly become free. Next begins a new journey. The art of forgiveness. Not forgiveness for others, but learning to forgive yourself so your heart can flow freely again, like a river that releases every stone in its path. There is a strange paradox in life. Many people believe that cutting someone out of their lives in anger will bring freedom. Yet curiously, after doing so, their hearts remain restless and the mind still full of waves, because anger never cuts the cord of suffering, it only tightens it. Anger is a fire that burns one's own peace before it ever touches anyone else. When we say, "I don't want to remember anymore," that very moment we are remembering. When we say, "I want to move," on that very moment, we are fighting ourselves. Long ago, in an old temple perched on a mountainside, two disciples studied under the guidance of an elderly Zen master. One was named Ryu, fiery and impulsive. The other, Shin, calm, quiet, always wearing a gentle smile. One morning, as they were preparing tea for the master, a disagreement arose about how the tea should be brewed. Ryu insisted that Shin was doing it wrong, while Shin remained silent and serene. But that very silence ignited Ryu's temper. He slammed the teapot onto the ground. The crash echoed across the still courtyard. "If you won't tell us who is right, master, I will leave this place." Ryu shouted and stormed away, carrying with him the flame of resentment burning in his chest. He descended the mountain and lived alone in a small hut. Day after day, Ryu meditated in anger, believing he was seeking his own enlightenment, not realizing that his very anger had imprisoned him in an invisible cage. Years passed. Ryu's hair turned gray, but his heart still knew no peace. One day, he heard that the Zen master was near death and hurried back to the temple. When he entered the small room, the master lay there, his breathing faint. Beside him sat Shin, his old companion, quietly chanting sutras. The master opened his eyes and smiled faintly at Ryu. His voice was soft like a passing breeze. "You have traveled far, but it seems you still carry a fire inside you." Ryu knelt down, tears falling. "I have been angry with Shin, with myself, and with the years I wasted in pride." The master whispered, "Go to the garden and bring me a peach." Ryu obeyed. But when he returned, the master had already closed his eyes forever. Ryu froze, then fell beside his teacher, weeping uncontrollably. Shin placed a hand on his shoulder and spoke quietly. Before he passed, the master said, "Anger is an unripe fruit. If you pick it too early, it will taste bitter." At that moment, Ryu felt as if struck by lightning. He finally understood all those years he had believed he had let go when he left. But in truth, he had been dragging the chains of his own anger wherever he went. That night, Ryu lit an incense stick in the temple courtyard. The small flame flickered in the wind, illuminating a face lined with time. He whispered softly, as if confessing to the night, "I am no longer angry, master." A gentle breeze passed through the peach trees carrying their fragrance, and for a moment, something felt released. The wind murmured like the heart of someone who had learned the art of forgiveness. The story of Ryu and the Zen master is a metaphor for the nature of anger in the human heart. We often think that by getting angry and cutting someone off, we are escaping them. But anger is actually the last thread connecting us, bound by resentment, resistance, and pain. In Buddhist teaching, anger is called the fire of ignorance. It burns away the good seeds within us, drives us to act blindly, and then makes us suffer for what we ourselves have done. The Buddha once taught anger is like holding a burning coal to throw at someone else. The one who gets burned first is you. Anger is never strength. It is weakness disguised as power. When the mind does not understand, it uses anger to defend itself. But when wisdom arises, one sees that forgiveness is not weakness, it is clarity. It is the act of one who understands cause and effect. In Zen, they teach, do not suppress anger, understand it. Only when we see anger clearly can we realize that it is not me. It is only a passing cloud within the mind. If we pause and observe, the breath becomes cool water that extinguishes the fire of anger. In daily life, anger itself is natural, but when we feed it, it becomes a chain. When we suppress it, it becomes darkness. But when we understand it, it becomes a teacher. Modern psychology has found that each time we become angry, the brain releases stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. If that state continues, the body weakens, leading to exhaustion, insomnia, and heart damage. In other words, anger burns not only the mind, but also the body. Buddhism calls this instant karma, the suffering born the very moment the mind is disturbed. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is good karma, a powerful force of healing. To forgive does not mean to forget. It means to stop punishing yourself for someone else's mistake. Think about it. Every time you're angry with someone, you replay their image in your mind hundreds of times. So who is being held captive? You are. Forgiveness is the act of unlocking your own chains, not theirs. And when you truly forgive, you'll discover something strange. Love still remains, but the pain is gone. Because letting go does not kill love, it purifies it, making it as clear as moonlight reflected on still water. To love a flower is not to pluck it, but to let it bloom, fade, and return to the earth. That is the next journey. The art of loving without holding, of caring, without possessing, of living without fearing loss. Have you ever asked yourself, what is true love? Is it holding on tightly so you won't lose someone, or having the courage to let them go where their heart leads? We often confuse love with possession. When we love, we want the other to be happy, but when fear of losing them creeps in, love begins to change shape. Long ago, in a small village nestled by the mountains, there was a young man named Aaron, honest, gentle, and deeply devoted to a girl named May. They grew up together, sharing clear mornings and golden sunsets. To Aaron, May was not just the woman he loved, she was the very breath of his life. One day, May told him she wanted to leave the village to study medicine in a faraway place. Aaron froze, his voice trembling. "If you go, I'll lose you." May smiled softly. "You won't lose me. I'm just going to learn and I'll come back." But Aaron shook his head, fear heavy in his tone. "No, you belong to me." May fell silent. The next morning she left in the mist, leaving behind a man standing motionless among the hills of flowers, his heart full of haze and hurt. Years passed. Aaron still lived in that same small village, walking the same roads, picking a wildflower each day to place on the rock where they once sat together. His love had become a silent ritual, beautiful, but lonely. Each petal was a prayer that never received an answer. One autumn afternoon, as the forest shimmered in its final gold, May returned. She was different, her eyes deeper, her voice softer and warmer, like someone who had walked through many storms. "You're still the same," she said, smiling with a trace of sadness. Aaron looked at her, a faint smile on his lips. "I've kept my love for you all this time." May replied gently, her voice as light as the wind. "But don't you see? When you hold on too tightly, it stops being love. It becomes a wall between you and the world." That night, Aaron went to see the old Zen master in the village. Under the moonlight, he asked, "Master, I've loved sincerely, but why does love hurt so much?" The master led him to the stream and pointed at the still water, reflecting the full moon. "Do you see the moon in the water?" "Yes, I do." "If you wanted to keep that moon, how would you do it? I can't." "Master, if I touch the water, the reflection disappears." The master smiled. "Exactly, Aaron. Love is like the moon reflected in water. When you try to grasp it, it vanishes. Only when the water of your mind is still does the reflection remain clear and beautiful." Aaron stood in silence. He realized that all this time, he hadn't truly loved. He had only been clinging to a memory, an image that no longer belonged to the present. The next morning, he climbed the hill with one last flower. He placed it on the old stone where they once laughed. No more prayers, no more sorrow. He simply stood there gazing at the sky where the moon still shone quietly. And for the first time in years, his heart felt light because he finally understood. True love is not holding on, but letting it be free like the moon that still reflects in the water, even when no one is watching. The story of Aaron and May mirrors the nature of every human connection. We love, yet deep inside we are afraid of loss, of being replaced, of being alone. That fear suffocates love. In Buddhism, there is a word, letting go. But letting go does not mean indifference or coldness. It means understanding the impermanence of all things. When we realize that nothing can be held forever, we begin to truly cherish each moment we have. The Buddha once taught, "If you love without knowing how to let go, you will suffer. If you let go without love, you will become cold. Only when you love with letting go and let go with love will you know true freedom." When we love with attachment, love becomes the prison of the ego. When we love with release, love becomes a stream of compassion. True love is not about holding someone. It's about understanding that they too are on their own journey toward happiness. Letting them go does not mean you stop loving them. It means you trust their path and you no longer force them to follow yours. Many people think letting go is losing, but in truth, letting go is purification. Just as a muddy pond clears only when it is left undisturbed, and a clenched hand cannot receive anything new, when you let go, you don't lose love. You return it to its true form, free, kind, and unconditional. Modern psychology calls this detachment with love, separating from control, while keeping compassion. When you no longer wish to control others, you begin to see them through the eyes of understanding. When you stop trying to possess love, you become possessed by love itself, not as bondage, but as peace that flows. If you are in a tense relationship, ask yourself, do I love this person, or do I just love being needed by them? That single question can open the door to awakening. Each night before sleep, try a short meditation. Sit still, close your eyes, inhale and say silently in your heart, I am here with myself. Exhale and say, I allow everyone to be free. Imagine invisible threads connecting you to those you have loved, resented, or missed. As you breathe out, see those threads slowly dissolve into the air. You don't need to erase memories, only release the need to control. Then you will feel a warmth spreading through your body and mind. Letting go is the first step toward peaceful rest, because no one can sleep deeply while the mind is still clinging. The deepest sleep belongs to the one who knows there is nothing to hold no one, to keep nothing to fear losing. And one day, you will realize every person who crossed your path, whether they made you smile or brought you to tears, came to teach you a lesson about love and release. No one truly leaves. They only change roles in your journey of awakening. Every encounter is a teacher. When the lesson is learned, they move on. When we cling, it means we haven't understood yet. And that will be the next journey, to recognize those teachers in the form of love, loss, and silence. Because within every meeting lies a doorway leading you back to yourself. Have you ever wondered why some people enter our lives only to stay for a short while and then quietly leave? They walk and leave deep marks on our hearts, and we can never forget them. We call them lovers, friends, betrayers, or the ones who hurt us. But if we look deeper, all of them are teachers appearing at the right moment to teach us what we need to learn, and disappearing when the lesson is done. Long ago, in a small village by the forest, there lived a young man named Nero. He had lost his parents as a child and was raised by an old master who taught him not only letters and morality, but above all, how to look at life with a calm heart, like a still lake, untouched by the wind. When he grew up, Nero left the village to find work in the city below. The city was dazzling, noisy, and full of new wonders. There he met a girl named Leary, gentle and radiant like the morning sun. They fell in love quickly and lived as if happiness would last forever. But after only a year, Leary disappeared without a word, without a trace. Nero was devastated. He left the city and returned to the old temple seeking his teacher. When they met again, he knelt and said, his voice trembling, "Master, I don't understand. I loved her with all my heart. Why did she leave me?" The master didn't answer right away. He quietly poured tea. The steam rose like a wisp of mist. Handing Nero a cup, he said, "Do you see this cup of tea? It's very hot. If you hold it tightly, you'll get burned. But if you hold it gently, you'll feel its warmth and fragrance." Nero looked at the cup, puzzled. "Master, what do you mean?" "Love," the master smiled, "is like this cup of tea. When you grasp it too tightly, you get burned. When you hold it with care, it warms you." Nero fell silent. He understood part of it, but the pain inside him had not yet eased. He left the temple carrying that lesson and continued his journey. Years passed. Nero met many people, Some brought him joy, some brought him pain. Some walked with him only for a short while, but left lasting marks on his heart. Gradually, he began to understand no one ever truly leaves us. They simply play their role in the lesson that life offers. Many years later, Nero returned to the old temple. Moss covered the roof. The morning mist embraced the bamboo trees. His teacher's hair had turned white, but his eyes were still bright and kind. Nero bowed deeply and said softly, "Now I understand, Master. Everyone who has walked through my life has been my teacher. Some taught me to love, some taught me to let go, some taught me to forgive, and some taught me never to forget myself." The Zen master smiled and poured another cup of tea. His voice was calm and warm like the evening wind. "You have learned one lesson, but the journey continues. Whenever someone enters or leaves your life place, your palms together and bow in gratitude, for they are all part of your path to awakening." Nero watched the tea steam rise and felt peace within. He realized that life never truly takes anything from us. It only teaches us how to love without burning and how to let go without losing gratitude. Nero's story reflects a profound truth in Buddhist teaching. Every relationship is a matter of karma and condition. Those who come and those who go, none of them are by chance. They appear when the causes and conditions are ripe to help us learn a lesson that our heart has yet to understand. When the lesson is complete, the karma dissolves, and each person continues their own journey. The Buddha once taught, "Every meeting is a matter of condition. When the condition is full, we meet. When it fades, we part without resentment, without hatred, without clinging. When we don't understand this, we suffer. We try to hold on to control to turn back time. But that is illusion, because life never pauses for anyone. When someone hurts us, we learn patience. When someone leaves us, we learn to stand on our own. When someone betrays us, we learn not to betray ourselves. When someone loves us unconditionally, we learn compassion. Each person is a mirror showing us what is still dark within ourselves. If we feel anger toward them, we are angry at that dark part within us. If we feel gratitude toward them, it means we have begun to understand ourselves more deeply. In modern life, we often react strongly to loss. When someone leaves, we see it as failure. But in truth, it is the completion of a chapter in our consciousness. Just as a student cannot stay forever in the same class, we cannot hold on to those who have already finished teaching their lesson in our lives. A relationship that ends is not meaningless. Its meaning lies in the lesson it leaves behind. Modern psychology says the same thing. Every interaction is a mirror reflecting our unconscious mind. What we dislike in others often reveals what we haven't accepted in ourselves. When we recognize that, we stop blaming them. Buddhism calls this self-contemplation, seeing ourselves in others, and seeing others within ourselves. When we understand this deeply, hatred dissolves and gratitude arises. Gratitude to those who came, for they gave us joy. Gratitude to those who left, for they gave us lessons. Gratitude to those who hurt us, for they woke us up. One day, as the Zen master was sweeping leaves in the temple yard, a novice monk asked, "Master, people say impermanence is the law of life. But if everything changes, how can I love without fearing loss? The master put down his broom and smiled. A Zen master once said, "This cup is already broken the moment I hold it." When you know the cup is already broken, you no longer fear the day it falls. You love every moment while it's still whole because you know its beauty exists only in this moment. And that is the next lesson to understand impermanence, so that you may truly cherish. Love is not beautiful because it lasts. It is beautiful because we know it is fragile. Only when we accept that everything can fade can we finally love with our whole heart without fear of loss. Have you ever wondered why people suffer when things change? Why we fear loss, separation, the passing of time, even when we know that nothing can last forever? Human beings hold a deep illusion, the illusion of permanence. We believe that what is good must endure, that love should not fade, that those we love should never leave us. But the universe was never created to satisfy that wish. Everything from the blooming of a flower to the fall of a dewdrop is dissolving moment by moment. Long ago, in a misty mountain range, there was a small Zen temple hidden among tall pine trees. Each morning, the temple bell echoed through the fog, blending with the rustle of leaves, a reminder that time waits for no one. Among the monks was a young disciple named Eshin, diligent, careful, and full of gratitude for all he had. He cleaned every object with reverence, folded his robes neatly, and even cared for the stones in the garden, as if they had souls. For Eshin, every bowl, every leaf, every breath was a gift to be cherished. One afternoon, as the sun tilted behind the pine ridge, Eshin was washing bowls after a meal. Suddenly his hand slipped, and the ceramic bowl his master had once given him fell to the ground and shattered. The sound of breaking echoed sharply through the still courtyard. Eshin froze. It felt as though something inside him had cracked as well. He sat in silence, staring at the broken pieces scattered across the stones, his heart heavy with regret. At that moment, the Zen master walked in. He observed the scene quietly, then asked, "What are you looking at?" "Eshin, master." Eshin said softly, "I broke the bowl you gave me. I feel so sorry." The master smiled gently. "Do you grieve for the bowl or for your feeling about it?" Eshin said nothing. The master sat beside him, picked up a fragment, and held it to the sunlight. It glimmered like a tiny mirror. "See," he said, "it still shines. The bowl has only changed its form, it hasn't disappeared. Everything in your life is the same. Nothing is ever lost. It only shifts within the flow of impermanence." Seeing his student still puzzled, the master continued with a story. Once there was a king who owned a priceless crystal cup. He loved it so much that he forbade anyone to touch it. Every day he polished it carefully, yet his heart was filled with fear that it might break. And one day, while cleaning it, his hand slipped. The cup fell and shattered into pieces. The king was devastated. He cried that heaven had taken his treasure away. A hermit heard of his sorrow and came to visit. He said, "Your Majesty, you should have seen the cup as already broken the moment you first held it. Only by knowing it will break could you have truly enjoyed it while it was whole." The master fell silent. The sun had faded. Only the sound of the wind whispering through the pines remained. Tears welled up in Eshen's eyes as he bowed his head. He understood what hurt him was not the broken bowl, it was his desire to hold onto what could not be kept. That night, Eshen gathered the fragments and placed them in a corner of the garden. When the moon rose, its light reflected off the pieces like scattered stars. He pressed his palms together and whispered, "Nothing is truly broken. Only my heart has not yet let go." From that day, Eshen was no longer afraid of loss. He learned to see the world through the eyes of impermanence, where every beginning already carries its own ending, and within every ending lies the seed of peace. In Buddhism, impermanence, anicca, is one of the three marks of existence, along with suffering, dukkha, and non-self, anatta. Everything in this world, whether material or emotional, is constantly changing moment by moment. Life is a continuous flow. The moment we try to make anything stay still, we begin to suffer. People suffer because they cling to the illusion that they can hold on to what is dissolving. We want relationships to stay the same, bodies to never age, memories to never fade. But life is like a river. The tighter we grasp, the faster it slips away. The Buddha once said, "All that is born will also die." Knowing this, the wise do not fear. The pain of loss comes from resisting the natural order. When we accept that everything is already broken, the moment we hold it, the heart softens. We begin to feel gratitude for the brief moments that once were, just as no one mourns a flower for wilting. Because we know its fading nourishes new blooms, we too can learn to see endings as part of renewal. But human beings are different. We want the flower to bloom forever. We want the person we love to stay unchanged. We want yesterday to return. That craving gives birth to the illusion of permanence, the root of all suffering. Zen teaches us to release the wanting so we can see what is. Not to deny happiness, but to see it with awakened eyes. Because we know it is fragile, we cherish it more. Because we know it will pass, we love more deeply in each breath. In modern life, we lose our peace not because of loss itself, but because we cannot accept that loss is natural. When someone leaves, we think they have taken our happiness away. When something breaks, we think our happiness is broken too. But in truth, loss exists only in perception. Modern psychology calls this the illusion of control. The belief that we can control emotions, people, or destiny. When reality defies that belief, we collapse. Yet when we let go of that illusion, we become free. People often say, "I'm afraid of losing the one I love." But if we look deeper, we're not truly afraid of losing them. We're afraid of losing the part of ourselves that we've tied to them. We've mistaken connection for identity, forgetting that our true nature is freedom. Buddhism teaches that love is not about possession. It is about seeing impermanence together. If love remains, love fully. If it must go, let it go with gratitude. Because nothing belongs to us, only the present moment borrows us for a while. A Zen master once said, "This cup is already broken the moment I hold it." That is not a pessimistic thought. but the wisdom of one who has seen the beauty of impermanence. When we know that all things will fade, we stop clinging, we stop resisting. Then, every remaining moment becomes radiant like a dewdrop glistening on a morning leaf, luminous precisely because it will soon vanish. Love is the same. It is not beautiful because it lasts, but because it is fragile. No one can hold on to the one they love forever, but everyone can love completely in the moment they are here. And that is the next lesson of the path, that acceptance does not mean surrender, but the end of resistance to reality. When we accept, the heart expands like the sky, where pain drifts like passing clouds, silent, natural, and dissolving into the vastness of emptiness. Perhaps each of us has asked, how can I find peace amid things I cannot change? People often think acceptance is a kind of surrender, a sign of giving up when there's no other way. But in Buddhist teachings, acceptance is not defeat. It is awakening the moment we stop fighting what is and begin to see the true nature of suffering. That evening, the wind from the pine forest carried the first chill of the season. Golden leaves drifted slowly around the temple veranda, touching the moss-covered steps with a soft sound. In the dim light of dusk, a middle-aged woman walked through the temple gate. Her face was pale and tired, her eyes heavy with grief, as if winter had settled inside her heart. She bowed deeply and said, her voice trembling, "Master, I did everything I could to save my marriage. I endured, I sacrificed, I begged, but in the end, he still left. I can't accept it. I feel as though life is punishing me." The Zen master sat in silence for a long time, his gaze calm and kind. Then he asked, "If you were caught in a heavy rainstorm, what would you do?" "I would run to find shelter, master." "But what if there was no place to hide?" The woman lowered her head. Tears fell quietly onto her robe. The master spoke softly, his voice as gentle as the wind. "Then you could stop running. Open your hands and let the rain fall upon you. When you stop running, the rain is no longer your enemy. That is the power of acceptance." The woman lifted her face. For a moment, the fading light touched her features, a faint reflection of the first hope after a storm. The master continued his teaching. Long ago, there was a farmer who lived in a small village by the mountain. He had a precious horse, and the villagers often said he was fortunate. One day, the horse ran away. Everyone came to console him, but the farmer simply said, "Who knows if this is a good thing?" A few days later, the horse returned, bringing 3 wild horses with it. The villagers rejoiced. "You're so lucky." The farmer replied, "Who knows if this is a bad thing?" The next day, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses and fell, breaking his leg. The villagers came to express their sorrow, but the farmer remained calm. Who knows if this is a good thing? Soon after war broke out, all the young men in the village were drafted into battle except his son, who stayed behind because of his injury. The master paused, then looked gently at the woman. "Do you see every event holds 2 sides?" The farmer was not indifferent. He had learned to live with what happened, not against it. The woman was silent for a long time. Then she whispered, "Master, does that mean I don't have to forget? I just have to stop resisting?" The master nodded. "Yes, when you stop resisting, reality, pain begins to dissolve. When you stop running, the rain is simply rain. Outside, the rain had stopped. The ground was still wet, yet the cool scent of grass and air made the world feel strangely fresh. The woman bowed and thanked the master. As she left the temple, the last rays of sunset touched her hair with a soft golden glow. The master watched her go and murmured to himself, "Acceptance does not make us weak. It only makes the heart wide enough to hold both loss and peace." In Buddhist teaching, there is a beautiful phrase, "flow with the conditions." It does not mean giving up or neglecting life. It means harmonizing with the truth of the present moment. When we resist what is happening, we only deepen our suffering. But when we look deeply and accept, we begin to see that everything unfolds according to its own causes and conditions. Acceptance is not passive. It is the wisdom of seeing impermanence clearly. We cannot command the rain to stop, nor can we make autumn last forever. But we can stand still and watch the leaves fall without sorrow. The Buddha once said, "He who accepts suffering has already overcome half of it." Acceptance frees us from the war within. Because in truth, what exhausts us is not the event itself, but the inner resistance, the mind that refuses to believe this has happened. When we lose someone we love, the heart screams, "No, it shouldn't be this way." But when we pause, take a breath and admit it has happened, the tears that fall in that moment mark the first step toward healing. In life, many people mistake acceptance for weakness, but in reality, only the brave can truly accept, because acceptance requires us to face the truth without running away. When we no longer try to push pain away, we finally see its nature, and once understood, it begins to fade. Modern psychology calls this radical acceptance. It is not approval. It is acknowledging what exists. When you accept your inner energy shifts, you stop struggling and you begin to listen. In that stillness, the heart expands like the sky, where pain drifts like passing clouds. If you are suffering over something unchangeable, a lost relationship, a broken dream, someone who won't return, try stopping. Not to give up, but to stop fighting what is. When resistance ends, something miraculous happens. The energy of pain begins to transform into peace. Like the farmer in the story, you don't need life to go your way to be at ease. You only need a heart that moves in harmony with life's flow, welcoming what comes, releasing what goes. No clinging, no forcing. And strangely, when the heart accepts, life becomes lighter. What once caused pain becomes a lesson. Those who once made us cry become mirrors that illuminate us, and loss itself becomes a teacher showing us how to live fully in the present moment. Acceptance does not mean surrender. It means no longer resisting reality. When you accept, the mind becomes vast like the sky, where pain passes like clouds, and you remain as the open, compassionate sky, untouched by wounds. A Zen master once said, "The person you love is a mirror reflecting the part of you that is yet to heal." And when you see that clearly, love stops being an escape. It becomes a path of practice, where every wound is met with compassion, and everyone who once hurt you becomes a guide to awakening. That is the next part of the journey, learning to see the one you love as a mirror of your own heart, not to blame them, but to recognize yourself. There is a paradox in love. When we love someone deeply, we do not only see them, we also begin to see ourselves. Every gesture, Every word from the one we love becomes a mirror reflecting the hidden corners within us, old wounds, fears, and parts of the heart that have not yet healed. And that is why love, instead of being a place of refuge, often becomes the very ground where all that we've avoided comes to light. Long ago, in a fog-covered valley, there stood a small temple where a young monk named Cairo lived and practiced. He was known for his quiet nature and his devotion to every small task, sweeping the courtyard, preparing tea-copying sutras. For Cairo, every sound of daily life was an echo of Zen. One day, while walking down to the village to receive alms, he heard a voice singing by the roadside, fragile yet clear, coming from beneath an old ginkgo tree. There sat a blind girl, holding a small stringed instrument, singing softly for coins to get through the day. Each time he passed, Cairo would stop and listen. Her voice was simple, unadorned, but it carried a sorrow as deep as the autumn wind sighing through pine forests. Gradually, something within him began to stir, a tenderness, a compassion, and an inexplicable pull toward her presence. One cold, rainy afternoon, when dark clouds hung heavy over the sky, Cairo walked through the village again. He found the girl still sitting in her usual place, soaked and trembling. Unable to hold back, he removed his robe and gently placed it over her shoulders. "You shouldn't sit here in the rain," he said softly. The girl smiled faintly, turning her clouded eyes toward him. Her voice was warm and pure. "People are not afraid of the rain, only of the cold inside their hearts." Her words struck Cairo deeply. From that day on, his heart was no longer at peace. Each sound of the temple bell, each drop of falling water, reminded him of the girl sitting in the rain. He tried to meditate, but his mind was restless. He chanted sutras, but his voice trembled. At last, one night, he went to see the abbot. In the dim light of an oil lamp, Cairo knelt before his master. "Master," he said, "I have practiced for many years, but now I cannot stop thinking about her. Where did I go wrong?" The master poured tea. Steam rose softly between them. "You have not gone wrong, Cairo," he said. "You simply do not yet understand love. When you love, you believe you are reaching outward, but in truth, you are turning inward. The one you love is a mirror reflecting your own heart." "But Master," Cairo whispered, "it hurts." "It hurts," said the master, "because you think you are holding someone else's hand, when in reality you are holding the part of yourself that longs to be healed." "Then how can I stop suffering?" Cairo asked. "See her," said the master, "as you would see your own heart. If you see beauty in her, that beauty already lives within you. If she makes you ache, that pain was already there, waiting for someone to touch it so it could be seen." From that night on, Cairo stopped trying to suppress his feelings. Each morning he sat by the lake in meditation, listening to the sound of water, not to forget the girl, but to look deeply into what she had awakened within him. A year later, when he returned to the village, the townspeople told him the blind girl had passed away from illness. Cairo stood silently beneath the ginkgo tree where she used to sing. The wind stirred the golden leaves, and one fell gently onto his shoulder. He bowed deeply and whispered, "Thank you. You taught me how to love, not to possess, but to understand, to care, and to see myself." And in the wind, her voice seemed to echo once more, soft as rain lingering long after the sound had faded. That story is not merely about romantic love. It is a parable of awakening. The one we love is the mirror reflecting the parts of ourselves that have yet to be healed. When we realize this, love stops being a pursuit of another person and becomes a journey back to our own heart. In Buddhism, the mind is often compared to a lake. When still, it reflects everything clearly. When disturbed, it distorts every image. We often believe that someone else made us suffer, but in truth, they only stirred the waters. The ripples were already there. The Buddha taught no one makes you suffer except your own mind reacting to what is. Love is an opportunity to see what we are clinging to. We cling to the idea of being loved, so when we feel neglected, we suffer. We cling to an image of the other person, so when they change, we feel loss. We cling to the past, so we cannot embrace the present. When clinging ends, love transforms into compassion, no longer possession, but understanding. To love is not to own, but to see clearly, to grow in the light of awareness. In modern life, many people seek love to fill an emptiness, not to understand themselves. Yet it is through relationships that we come face to face with the deepest layers of our own mind. Modern psychology speaks of the mirror effect. We are drawn to those who embody what is hidden within us. If we fear abandonment, we fall for the distant. If we feel inferior, we love those who make us feel small. If we have not learned to love ourselves, we chase those who make us beg for affection. This is not fate. It is the invitation to heal. When we stop viewing relationships through blame and begin to look through awareness, everything changes. The one who once made us cry becomes a teacher, showing us boundaries, self-respect, and gratitude. The Buddha taught that everyone who enters our life is a form of karmic connection. No one arrives too early or too late. They come exactly when a lesson must be learned. And when the lesson is complete, they leave not out of cruelty, but because their part in our story is done. When we see that the person we love is only reflecting the unhealed part of ourselves, love becomes a path of meditation where every wound is a lesson, every encounter is a karmic meeting, and every farewell is an invitation to look deeper within. After they leave, we may believe we are alone, but in that silence another kind of peace begins to bloom, the peace of one who no longer needs to cling. And that is the next step on the path, the silence after separation, where we learn to sit with our emptiness and discover that beneath the ache of loss, there is a quiet light within us that has never gone out. There is a silence after every separation that few dare to step into. Many fear it because in that silence there are no more voices, no more familiar faces, only the breath and heartbeat of one's own being. After leaving a relationship, we think we've lost everything: the other person, the memories, the warmth. But in truth, what we lose first is not the other person, but the part of ourselves that once lived for them. And within that loss, a different kind of peace begins to grow, the peace of someone who no longer needs to cling. Long ago, in a misty mountain valley, there was a small temple resting quietly by the rocky slope. In that temple lived a monk named Shun, who had spent more than half his life there, silent as a lamp in a gentle breeze. He had a young disciple, intelligent, devoted, and always following him like a shadow. To To Shun, the young man was more than a student. He was like the son he never had. Every morning, they swept the courtyard, drank tea, and chanted sutras together. Each evening, they sat beneath the pines, listening to the wind, speaking softly about impermanence, compassion, and the unspoken meanings of the Buddha's teachings. To Shun, those were the most peaceful days of his life. Then one morning, the disciple was gone. No farewell, no trace, only his folded robe left neatly on the temple steps. The days that followed were quiet. Shun continued sweeping, chanting, making tea. Yet each time the morning bell rang, he would lift his eyes toward the distant forest path that led away from the temple. He felt no anger, only an emptiness, shapeless yet heavy as mountain fog. A silence between two breaths. Autumn passed. Winter came. One afternoon, as snow fell softly over the porch, the disciple returned clothes, torn hair, disheveled eyes, weary. He knelt before his teacher, voice trembling. "Master, I've gone too far. I thought I was seeking freedom, but I found only loneliness. Please, let me return." Shun said nothing. He sat still with his eyes closed. The room was filled with silence, only the wind outside, and the faint crackle of firewood in the distance. After a long while, Shun opened his eyes, looked at the young man, and spoke calmly. "What have you learned in the silence of your own mind?" The disciple bowed, tears falling onto the wooden floor. "I realized you never left me. It was I who had left myself." Shun nodded gently, a kind smile flickering like sunlight through mist. "Good. Now you see. Silence is not distance. It is when there is nothing left to hold on to." From that night on, they meditated together on the temple porch. No words, no chants, only the wind through the pines and moonlight touching the earth. In that stillness, the disciple came to understand. Emptiness is not void. It is where the heart finds its true resting place. And in the pale light of dawn, Shun still sat there, his presence one with the mountain itself, silent, steady, and compassionate, like the very silence he taught. The silence after separation is a form of spiritual practice life offers us. While in a relationship, we live among voices, messages, and constant presence. But when all of that fades, the mind reveals its most fragile parts: the fear of being abandoned, the fear of loneliness, the fear of being unloved. If we dare to stay with that emptiness, not rushing to fill it, not escaping into someone new, silence becomes the voice of wisdom. The Buddha taught, "When the mind is still, all things reveal themselves." In meditation, silence is not the absence of sound. It is the cessation of reaction. Silence does not come when we cover our ears, but when we no longer argue with what is. After a breakup, many people ask, "How do I forget?" But forgetting is not the goal of meditation. Meditation does not erase memory, it dissolves attachment. We do not forget the other person. We simply stop suffering because of them. Why? Because we see that every relationship is karmic. When the cause is complete, it arises. When it is exhausted, it passes. Like breathing, when we inhale, life begins. When we exhale, we release it so that life may continue in another form. Silence is the breath between those two moments where the old life fades and the new one prepares to blossom. In life, after every loss, people try to fill the void with music, conversation work, or someone new. But the more we fill it, the emptier we feel. because emptiness does not live outside of us. It lives in the part of the mind that has not yet been understood. If we dare to sit and listen to that inner silence, we will see loneliness is not the enemy, it is the doorway. A doorway that opens inward, leading us back to ourselves. Modern psychology also shows that emotional maturity begins with the ability to sit peacefully with solitude. A Harvard study found that people who spend at least 15 minutes a day in inner silence experience lower anxiety, deeper sleep, and faster emotional recovery. That is very close to the spirit of Buddhist meditation. Stop resisting, start accepting. Not accepting the other person, but accepting the reality of their absence. When the mind accepts, it is no longer dragged into the past or pulled toward the future. It returns to the present, where peace has always been. The Buddha taught one who can stop even for a single breath has gone farther than one who walks 1,000 miles. That stopping is the silence after separation. When we stay still long enough, pain begins to dissolve like incense smoke fading into the wind. It doesn't vanish. It merges with the vastness, becoming light as if it had never been. The silence after separation is not an ending. It is the beginning of rebirth. When we stop seeking someone to fill the emptiness, we finally meet ourselves again. For every loss is a lesson in impermanence. If we let pain open us instead of closing us, our hearts become deeper, more compassionate, and that is the foundation for the next step of the spiritual path, learning to live with impermanence without fear. There are pains that do not come to hurt, but to awaken. After every loss, we often ask, "Why did this happen to me?" Yet rarely do we ask, "What have I learned from it?" When everything we love disappears, it feels as if the world collapses. But through the eyes of Zen, loss is not the end, it is the gateway to awakening. That afternoon, the rain had just stopped. In the monastery garden, drops of water still glistened on the Bodhi leaves like crystals. The golden light of sunset reflected gently on the still surface of the pond, making the scene seem like the moment between dissolution and renewal. The Zen master sat under a tree, slowly wiping a teacup. Footsteps echoed heavily on the stone path. A middle-aged man approached his robe stained with mud, his face marked with the deep lines of loss. He bowed and said with a trembling voice, "I've lost everything. My wife, my job, even my faith. I thought I was strong, but now I feel only emptiness. How can I keep living, Master?" The Zen master looked at him for a long time, his gaze gentle yet deep like water after the rain. Then he pointed to a bamboo stalk nearby, broken but still holding a few drops of sunlight at its tip. "Do you see that bamboo?" "Yes, Master. It broke in the storm, but its root remains. And because the root is still alive, next season it will sprout again." He paused, his voice soft as a breath. In the same way, loss only breaks what is temporary, but the deepest part of you, the root of your mind, is still intact. From there, new life will grow again. The man lifted his head, but in his eyes still lingered the ashes of despair. Seeing this, the master began to tell a story. Long ago, in a small village at the foot of a mountain, there lived a potter known for his skillful hands. His life revolved around his kiln, the place where earth, fire, and time came together. He created vessels so exquisite that people said they breathed. One day, while firing the finest batch of his life, the one he believed would carry his name far and wide, a great storm struck. Thunder roared. The flames went out. When he ran to the kiln, all that remained was ash and shards of shattered clay. He knelt in the mud, trembling, picking up each broken piece with tears falling into the earth. All these years of devotion. And now this is all that's left, he whispered as if speaking to fate itself. A Zen master happened to pass by. He asked nothing, said nothing, just sat down beside the potter. After a while, he picked up a shard and placed it in the man's hand. Look closely. Did the fire really destroy it? The potter looked. In the dim light, the fragment still glowed with a reddish-brown hue, as if it held a memory of the fire. The master smiled. Fire only breaks the form, but it also transforms earth into pottery. Without fire, how would you know the clay had ever lived? The words were like a breeze through the potter's heart. He fell silent, then bowed deeply. From that day on, he no longer mourned what was broken. He gathered the shards, polished them, and used golden resin to mend them. Each new vessel was imperfect but beautiful in its own way, with glowing cracks like sunlight shining through wounds. When people asked what he called them, he said rebirth vessels. The Zen master looked at the man sitting before him. You see, he said softly, sometimes it is the cracks themselves that let the light in. The man lowered his head. In the fading light, a drop of water fell from a Bodhi leaf, as if a new seed had just begun to sprout within him. The story of the potter is the story of all human life. Every loss is a kiln where the false self is burned away so that the true essence can be tempered. The Buddha taught there is no fire more consuming than the fire of desire, and no pain greater than ignorance. Ignorance is believing that what we have will last forever. When loss arrives, we resist, we suffer. Yet within that suffering, the gate of awakening opens. Awakening rarely comes during peaceful days. It often appears only after we are broken. Because when there is nothing left to cling to, we are forced to look directly into ourselves. In Zen, there is a principle only when the mind is empty can light enter. Just like a clay pot, if it never breaks, the potter will never see the light shining through its cracks. And so it is with us. Without loss, we would never understand the meaning of sufficiency, of gratitude, of depth. When loss occurs, our first reaction is resistance. We want to fix, to save, to hold on. But the Buddha said, what is born will perish. What comes together will fall apart. No one can hold on to anything forever. Not love, not family, not happiness. Everything comes to teach us something, then departs once the lesson is complete. When we accept this law, pain ceases to be the enemy. We begin to understand. Loss is a teacher, not a punishment. It comes to teach impermanence, that change is the natural way of things, to teach non-self, that nothing truly belongs to me, and to teach compassion, that when we understand suffering, we no longer wish to cause it to others. Modern psychology calls this post-traumatic growth, the growth that follows deep pain. Those who have endured profound suffering, if they learn acceptance, often develop greater kindness, empathy, and the ability to let go. They become quieter but wiser. They no longer seek joy in control but in understanding. Like the potter, when we accept the cracks, we create a new kind of beauty, the beauty of healing. And so it is with you. Your beauty does not lie in perfection, but in your capacity to rise from what has been broken. If tonight you lie awake because of a loss, remember, pain is not a full stop. It is a comma, a pause to let you breathe and see your life from another angle. Try sitting quietly. Close your eyes. Inhale and feel the ache in your chest. Exhale and whisper within, I do not need to push this pain away. I only need to see it as part of me. Do not force yourself to forget. Let memories flow like water. Because when you stop resisting, you begin to understand what the Buddha called transformation pain no longer controls you. It becomes the energy that helps you grow. If you observe carefully after every long night of loneliness, there is always a different kind of light the next morning, not from the sun, but from within. That light comes from acceptance itself. When we stop asking, why did this happen, and begin asking, what can I learn from this, that is the first step toward wisdom. The deepest rest does not come from escaping reality, but from accepting it completely and finding peace within it. Let each breath become a lullaby. I am not losing, I am transforming. Loss does not destroy us. It reveals who we truly are. When we allow pain to open us instead of close us, our hearts grow deeper, more compassionate. And then we come to realize something simple yet sacred. People often believe love must last to be real. But in truth, every emotion, every relationship, every joy is impermanent. Only by understanding this can we love without fear of loss, live without fear of change, and let go without feeling empty. In life, there is a very subtle illusion that almost everyone carries, the illusion that emotions can be permanent. We believe that if love is real, it will never change. If someone once said they loved us, they must love us forever. If a feeling once made us happy, it should stay with us for the rest of our lives. But perhaps it is this very illusion that is the source of most of our pain. Long ago, in a small temple on the mountainside, there was a young Zen student named Haru. He practiced diligently, lived quietly, and was deeply devoted to the path. But deep inside, there was still a cord, uncut, a love he had not let go of. Before ordaining, Haru had loved a girl. They grew up together and shared a simple dream of the future, a small house, a little garden, and evenings sitting on the porch watching the sunset. Before Haru left for the mountain to study the Dharma, she held his hand and softly said, I will wait for you until the day you return. That promise was like a lantern he carried through all his years of practice. On cold nights, when the temple bell echoed through the valley, he would remember her smile, warm and distant like a dream. But one autumn morning, Haru received news she had married someone else. The news came like a thin blade cutting deep without drawing blood. For many nights, Haru sat in meditation with tears falling. He tried to recite the Buddha's name, but every recitation turned into calling her name. His heart was full of resentment and emptiness, like someone standing at a crossroads who no longer knew which way led home. One morning, as the first light fell on the temple courtyard, Haru went to see the abbot, an old Zen master who had lived through countless storms of the human heart. Haru knelt down, his voice choked. "Master, I don't understand. How can love change so quickly? I held on to it with all my heart. Is love really just an illusion?" The Zen master did not answer immediately. He stood up and slowly walked to the pond. The surface of the water was still as a mirror reflecting the rising sun. He bent down, picked up a small stone, and gently tossed it into the pond. Ripples spread outward in circles, and the light flickered on the water like countless broken pieces of glass. "Do you see the waves?" he asked. "Yes, master." "Do you see the pond disappear?" "No, it's still there." The master looked at Haru, his voice deep and warm. "Love is like that. Emotions are waves, they come and they go. But true loving kindness is like the pond itself, still deep and never lost. People only mistake the waves for everything, so when the waves fade, they think love has died." Haru went quiet. After a while, he bowed his head and softly said, "Master, I understand now. I only loved the waves. I never truly touched the pond." From that day on, Haru no longer meditated to forget, but to look deeply into the movements in his own heart. He learned to observe each emotion as it arose and passed away like clouds drifting over the mountain peak. Every morning he went to the garden and sat watching flowers bloom and wither. When a petal fell, he smiled because he understood that within a falling petal, life was still quietly continuing. A year later, people saw that Haru had changed. His voice was calmer and his eyes were clear like water. When someone asked about his past love, he only smiled and said, "She did not leave me. She just became part of the stillness within me." And from then on, Haru was no longer afraid of losing because he had realized that true love does not lie in promises, but in the silent presence of the heart. The Buddha taught all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. Whatever is born must pass away. Human emotions are also conditioned phenomena. They arise from many causes and conditions. Our psychology, circumstances, body memories, even the weather. Therefore, every feeling has its cycle of arising, lasting, changing, and fading. But people tend to demand eternity from what is not eternal. When someone says, "I will love you forever," we believe in the word forever instead of the word love. We cling to the form of love instead of its essence. And when the form changes, we say love has died. While in reality, it has only changed shape from passion into memory, from attachment into gratitude. One who understands the Dharma does not love in order to keep, but loves in order to see clearly. To see clearly that everything is changing moment by moment. And that is exactly why each moment is precious. If we accept impermanence, love no longer frightens us. We no longer seek someone to belong to, but someone to truly be present with. We do not love to possess, but to illuminate one another. Love in the light of Zen is not a lifelong contract, but full presence in each moment. Like the sun shining, It does not hold onto anyone yet. Whoever walks under its light is warmed. In reality, the people who suffer most in love are often those who cannot accept change. We call this the illusion of emotional permanence. Illusion of emotional permanence. We believe that if we are happy today, tomorrow must be the same. But emotions are like the weather, always shifting. Modern psychologists point out that the human brain cannot maintain intense emotions for a long period of time. Burning love will eventually soften like a fire once it has made things warm enough. That is not because love has died, but because it has transformed from fire into light, from passion into understanding. If we don't understand this, we will keep searching for a new flame thinking the old one has gone out. But those who practice mindfulness know love doesn't need to burn brightly all the time. It just needs to keep shining. Every relationship teaches us something. Some people come to teach us how to love. Some people come to teach us how to let go. Some people come to teach us how to stand alone. When we understand this, we stop blaming and begin to feel grateful because real love is not found in the outcome, but in the growth of the heart. When night falls, if you feel restless because someone has changed, pause and take a deep breath. Breathe in and feel your heart beating. It is still alive, still capable of loving, even if that person is no longer by your side. Breathe out and let go of the question, why did they change? Let that question dissolve into space like incense, smoke fading into the wind. Breathe in and silently say, every emotion comes to teach me something. Breathe out and silently say, I am grateful for having loved, and I let that love go in peace. If you can do this, sleep will come as gently as a spring rain, not because you have forgotten, but because you have understood. And understanding is the deepest form of letting go. Love does not disappear, it only changes form. Yesterday it was words, today it is memory, tomorrow it is gratitude. If your heart is wide enough, you will see that the one who left is still here in your breath, in your smile, in the way you look at life more gently than before. When we clearly see that love does not need to be permanent to be real, we stop fearing loss. Because understanding impermanence is the most complete way to love without clinging, that is, love without fear. It does not demand closeness or ownership. It is free like light shining, warming, and then gently passing by, leaving behind a bright space in the heart where peace and gratitude bloom together. There is a strange paradox in love. The more we try to hold on, the more we lose. The more we want someone to stay, the more they feel compelled to leave. Because love does not bloom in control, it blooms in freedom. One spring morning in the temple's back garden, the wind gently stirred the bamboo leaves still heavy with dew. Birds chirped softly, greeting the new day. The Zen master was watering the small flower beds around the pond when a man approached. His face was marked by fatigue, his eyes clouded from sleepless nights. He bowed and spoke in a trembling voice. Master, I did everything to keep her. I loved, I pleaded, I begged, I tried to please her. But the more I held on, the further she went. Why is that, Master? The Zen master smiled silently. He set down his clay pitcher, filled it to the brim with water, and then tilted it slightly. The water overflowed, spilling onto the ground, catching the morning sunlight. "Do you see what happened?" he asked. "Yes, master." The water spilled out. Exactly. When you hold too tightly, you lose what you're trying to keep. But if you know when to stop, the water stays. He placed the pitcher down, his voice soft as the breeze through the bamboo grove. To love while clinging is fear disguised as affection. Only when love allows freedom does it become true love. The man bowed his head. In his eyes, the master saw not only the pain of losing someone, but the collapse of an illusion. The illusion that loving means holding on. The Zen master told a story. Long ago in an old monastery, there was a monk named Ray, known for his wisdom, but troubled by attachment. Before joining the temple, Ray had loved a woman deeply. She died of illness, leaving him with a void that nothing could fill. Since then, Ray kept everything that had belonged to her: the last letter, a ribbon for her hair, a handkerchief she once used. He believed that letting go would be betraying their love. For years, he meditated without peace. Whenever he closed his eyes, her image would appear. One day, Ray went to see the elderly Zen master, who had taught him since his early days. Kneeling with tears streaming down, he said, "I try to forget, but I can't. Every time I let go, my heart hurts. I'm afraid that if I stop remembering, I'll lose her forever." The master said nothing. He walked to the altar, picked up a faded lotus flower. A few petals fell, and a gentle fragrance filled the air. "Do you see, Ray? The petals have fallen. Is it still a lotus? No, master. But its fragrance still lingers," the master said with a faint smile. "Love is like that. It doesn't need a form to exist. When you stop grasping, its fragrance remains in your heart. But if you cling to the dried petals, you will never know the true scent of the lotus." The next day, Ray carried all her keepsakes to the stream. He lit a fire and burned them one by one. The ashes rose into the wind, painting thin trails of smoke across the sky. He watched them drift away, feeling both pain and relief. That night, for the first time in years, Ray meditated without tears. He heard the sound of water flowing, the wind moving over the temple roof. And within that stillness, something miraculous appeared. Love was still there, but he no longer needed to hold it. From then on, whenever the scent of lotus flowers drifted through the temple porch, Ray would smile, because he knew that sometimes letting go is not loss, but allowing love's fragrance to travel farther. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering. When we love, we often mistake affection for possession. We want the other person to belong to us, to look only at us, to stay only by our side. But in truth, no one can belong to anyone, because everything is impermanent. Feelings, appearances, thoughts, even our own selves are changing every day. Zen teaches non-attached love to love without clinging. Non-attachment does not mean coldness or indifference. On the contrary, it is the purest kind of love. because it is not bound by I or mine. Those who cling do not truly love, they only want to possess. Those who know how to let go are the ones who truly love, because they allow the other to be themselves. Look at a flower in bloom. It does not hold on to the bees, nor cling to the sunlight, nor demand to be admired. It simply blooms fully, because its nature is to bloom. And when it fades, it falls gently without resentment toward autumn. True love is the same. It does not exist to be returned, but to express compassion. It does not say, I need you, but softly wishes, may you be at peace. That is the highest form of love in Buddhism, fearless love. In daily life, many suffer not because love has ended, but because they cannot bear the feeling of losing control. When the other person is gone, we lose our role, our place, our habits, and we call that losing love. In truth, what we lose is the illusion that we could control another person. Love does not need ownership to be deep. It is deep because we lived it fully in each moment. Modern psychology also confirms this. When someone loves with a calm and unconditioned heart, their body releases oxytocin, the hormone of connection and peace. But when they love with fear, the body releases cortisol, the stress hormone causing a racing heart, insomnia, and restlessness. Therefore, loving without attachment is not only a spiritual path, but also a scientific therapy for healing the heart. The Buddha said, love without possession is like a flame without smoke. When we love mindfully, we do not need the other to respond. We only need to see them happy, even if that happiness no longer includes us. Because deep down, love is a river, not a container. When we stop holding it back, it flows freely again. To love without attachment, that is fearless love. It does not need closeness. It does not need ownership. It is as free as light shining, without holding, warming, without demanding in return. And if we are still enough to love in this way, we will realize that every relationship is a mirror showing us ourselves. If we fail to learn the lesson from one relationship, the same karmic pattern will return in another form, the new person, merely a new image of the old lesson. And the journey of awakening continues until we finally understand that true love is not in holding on, but in the ability to let go and still love. Have you ever wondered why the same kind of pain keeps repeating in your love life, even though the person beside you is different? Why do you still experience betrayal, silence, or loneliness, even in a new relationship? Is it fate mocking you? Or are you walking the same circle without realizing it? Long ago, in a small village by the mountainside, there lived a young woman named Aiko. She was kind, diligent, and warm-hearted. Everyone who met her loved her. Yet for many years, her love life felt like a loop she couldn't escape. Each time she fell in love, everything began beautifully. Her partner was gentle, attentive, and sweet like the first sunlight of spring. But gradually, they would grow distant, cold, and finally leave without saying goodbye. After her third heartbreak, Aiko could no longer understand what was happening. She began to doubt herself. Was she cursed in love one morning? As mist still blanketed the fields, she went to see an old Zen master who lived in a temple on the mountain. Bowing deeply, she asked with trembling voice, "Master, I always love with all my heart, yet every relationship ends the same. Do I carry some kind of karma in love?" The Zen master didn't answer right away. He smiled softly and led her to the back of the temple where there was an old moss-covered well. He picked up a small pebble and dropped it in. A faint plop echoed from below. "What did you hear?" he asked. "A small sound, master." "Then tell me, do you think this well is deep or shallow deep, I suppose?" The master nodded. "The deeper the well, the softer the sound. But if I dropped that same pebble into a shallow bowl of water, the splash would be loud." Turning to her, his eyes kind but deep as the well itself, he said, "You see, the heart is like water. The shallower it is, the louder the reaction. The deeper it is, the calmer it remains through change. What keeps repeating in your life does not come from the people you love, but from the depth of your own heart when you love." Aiko stood silent. His words echoed inside her like a bell. She realized she had spent all her time looking outward, waiting for others to make her happy without ever looking inward. From that day on, Aiko stopped seeking someone new. She began to live slowly and learn to be alone, not to escape, but to listen. Each morning she made tea and sat by the window, watching sunlight weave through the leaves. She practiced observing her own emotions when she missed someone, when she was afraid, when she felt lonely. Gradually, a truth revealed itself. She had never truly loved another person. She had only loved the feeling of being needed. Out of fear of being abandoned, she clung. Out of fear of losing, she held too tightly. And when those people left, she thought love was suffering. But in truth, it was her fear that caused the pain, not them. A year later, Aiko returned to the old temple. Her hair was longer, her eyes peaceful. She bowed and softly said, "Master, I met the one from my past again. But this time, I didn't feel anger or fear. I only felt gratitude because through them I learned to understand myself." The master smiled and nodded. When a lesson is learned, karma dissolves. No one hurts you twice. Only an unfinished lesson repeats itself through different faces. He looked into the distance as white clouds drifted over the mountain peaks. The temple bell rang deeply. Aiko stood still, smiling softly. Inside her, something had truly ended, and something quieter had just begun. In Buddhist teaching, there is a principle called karmic dependent origination, meaning that everything we encounter in life arises from seeds within our own mind. If the mind hasn't transformed, karma will continue to create similar bonds no matter how much the outer world changes. The Buddha said karma does not punish, it only reflects. This means that those who hurt us are not punishers, but mirrors showing what remains unhealed within. If we fear abandonment, we attract those who make us feel abandoned. If we believe we are not enough, we attract those who constantly make us prove our worth. Life is like a vast classroom. When we fail to learn a lesson, we must take it again, each time in a different form. New person, new timing, new situation. The one who hurts us today is not destiny. It is the continuation of yesterday's lesson. In Zen practice, this is called the repetition cycle of karmic emotion. It doesn't exist to punish, but to awaken. And when we realize that the root of suffering lies in our own grasping mind, not in others, karma dissolves like mist meeting sunlight. Many come to meditation not to seek enlightenment, but simply to stop suffering. Yet to end suffering, we cannot just change people, places, or situations. We must change the mind itself. When the mind changes, karma changes direction. In modern psychology, this is known as pattern repetition, the repetition of behavioral patterns. When a painful experience remains unresolved, the subconscious mind recreates similar situations in an attempt to complete the unfinished emotion. In other words, we unconsciously seek new people to finish an old story. But no one can heal us for us, only mindfulness and wisdom can. When we start observing our reactions in recurring situations, we notice that we're choosing the same old responses in a new setting. That very moment of recognition is the beginning of freedom. The Buddha taught, "The wise do not run from suffering. They look deeply into it to find its cause." If we dare to look, we'll see. The one who hurt us is not an enemy, but a teacher in disguise. They offer us the chance to see the shadowed corners of our own mind. And once we see, clearly resentment turns to gratitude. Because without those encounters, we would never know whether we are living by habit or by awareness. When night comes and you find yourself thinking about past relationships, don't try to push the memories away. Let each image, each feeling rise and fade like waves. Breathe in and recognize I am remembering. Breathe out and whisper to yourself, I don't need to change the past. Each breath is an opportunity to dissolve karma, not by forgetting, but by looking directly at what once hurt and smiling at it. Because when we stop resisting, the energy of acceptance dissolves the karmic current. Before sleep, imagine your mind as a still lake. Every memory that falls in creates only a small ripple, then disappears. Breathe in and learn to understand. Breathe out and learn to let go. And in that quiet sleep, the mind begins to learn again, not through thought, but through stillness. When we finally see that everyone who crosses our path carries the same lesson in different form, we stop asking, why did they do that? And begin asking, what am I meant to learn here? That is the first step toward wisdom. Letting go is not forgetting. It is acknowledging that someone once mattered, but their role has changed. Like a river merging into the sea, still water just in a different form. And when we understand this, we no longer fear loss because we know that every encounter is part of a greater lesson in love, a lesson leading us gently back to ourselves. There comes a stage in every relationship when we no longer ache from separation, no longer feel resentment, and no longer wish for the other person to return. Only a quiet stillness remains, like a river flowing into the sea, never returning, yet never truly gone. Could this be what we call letting go? And yet deep inside, a part of us still fears that to accept it means we have truly lost them. Letting go is not about trying to forget. It is about accepting that what once stirred our heart is now just the wind that has passed. Long ago, nestled among mist-covered mountains, there was a small temple beside a pine forest. In that temple, lived a young monk named Rin, who had once been a celebrated musician known throughout the land for melodies that could make people both cry and smile. Rin came to the temple after a great loss. His beloved wife had died of illness. On the day he saw her off, he put down his instrument forever. He shaved his head, donned the brown monk's robe, and entered the monastery seeking peace. But even after leaving the world behind, the echoes of the past lingered. On quiet nights when the temple bell had stopped ringing and only the wind whispered across the roof tiles, Rin would sit alone on the veranda. He would open an old wooden box and touch the worn strings of his instrument. The sound trembled fragile, like the breath of memory. And in that moment, his wife would return to him in fragments, her gentle smile, her soft hands, her voice humming by the fire. One night, as Rin played an old tune, the abbot, the elderly master he deeply revered, silently approached. Moonlight spilled across the temple courtyard, turning the master's robe a pale silver. "You still remember her?" the master asked. Rin bowed his head, voice trembling. "Yes, master. I try to forget, but I can't. Each time I touch the strings, my heart aches. I fear I am still attached." The master looked at him for a long time, neither judging nor pitying. Then he sat down beside him and pointed to the instrument. "Look at it carefully. This instrument once carried your love, your pain, your longing. But it can also carry you beyond suffering if you learn to play it differently." He took the instrument, placed it on his lap, and plucked a few strings. The sound that came forth was slow, pure, neither sad nor joyful, like the wind moving through a bamboo grove. The whole garden seemed to fall silent to listen. "Do you see?" the master said softly. "When the heart is still, the sound continues, but it no longer pierces." Rin sat quietly. Tears fell, but his lips curved into a faint smile. In that sound, he felt something deeper than memory, a peace, like the lake after the wind has passed. "So, I don't have to forget her, master." The old monk smiled gently. "No, you only have to stop binding her in your memories. Let her become a melody within your heart, one that has been played, leaving behind only gratitude." From that day, Rin continued to play, but no longer with tears. His music changed. It became soft as falling rain, deep as the earth, bright as moonlight after a storm. The sound spread through the temple, bringing calm to all who heard it. One day, a visitor asked the Zen master, "What is so special about the young monk's music?" The master looked toward Rin, sitting under the pine tree. Eyes half closed, a peaceful smile on his face. He answered quietly, "Because it is no longer the music of one who suffers, but of one who has accepted." From then on, each sunset, when Rin's music echoed through the temple, the whole place seemed bathed in a gentle light, the kind of light that can only come from a heart that has learned to let go. In Buddhism, acceptance is the final step of letting go. Many think letting go means forgetting cutting ties or erasing memories, but the more we try to forget, the more we remember. The more we resist, the greater the pain. The Buddha taught, it is not the pain itself, but the resistance to it that creates suffering. When we accept, we do not agree with the pain. We simply agree to see it as it is. Love, loss, separation, all are part of the ever-changing flow of life. When we understand this, we see that letting go does not mean losing. The ancients said, "When a river merges with the sea, it is not lost, it only changes form. So it is with love. Once it is complete, it no longer needs to stay in its old shape. It becomes gratitude, gentleness in memory, a quiet light in the heart." The Buddha once compared it to a flower. A flower blooms not for anyone, and it fades, not because of anyone. Love is the same. It comes, it blooms, it goes. If we understand, we can smile at the falling petals, knowing that spring still lives within the earth. From the perspective of modern psychology, this mirrors the concept of radical acceptance. It is not resignation, but the end of resistance to what cannot be changed. When the mind stops fighting, the nervous system self-regulates and emotional pain eases. That is why in meditation the breath is seen as the bridge between resistance and acceptance. Each inhalation welcomes truth. Each exhalation releases expectation. In life, we all have people who once mattered deeply, those who made us believe in love, those who broke us, those who changed us. And one day, we realize they are no longer where they used to be. Not because they disappeared, but because we have grown. Letting go is not erasing someone's name from memory. It is seeing them with new eyes, without attachment, without expectation, only with gratitude. When we accept this way, the energy of love does not vanish, it transforms into compassion. Compassion is love, purified of fear, possession, and condition. There is a truth that only those who have suffered understand. When we stop seeking someone to make us happy, we finally meet ourselves. And in meeting ourselves, every wound becomes a doorway to wisdom. Neuroscientists have also shown that when we practice mindfulness, accepting without judgment, the brain's stress and fight or flight centers calm down. This means acceptance is not only a spiritual act, but also a scientific form of healing. Letting go in the end is not closing a chapter. It is reading it to the end until we truly understand its meaning. Only then can we turn the page with a smile without tearing out the past. When you look back, instead of asking, "Why did they leave?" ask, "What have I learned about myself?" That question does not look outward for answers, but opens the inner door to awakening, where there is no longer fear of loss, because you finally see nothing ever truly leaves. It simply returns to its rightful place in the great flow of cause and connection. There are times when after someone leaves, we hurt so much that only one question remains in our heart. Why did they leave me? That question echoes over and over like a voice in a deep cave. Every time we think of it, our chest tightens again. But sometimes we forget to ask the more important question: what did this relationship come to teach me? Many years ago, in a small temple on the mountainside, there was a young man named Haru who came seeking guidance from a Zen master. Haru was kind and hardworking, but there was always a sorrow in his eyes, as deep as the early morning mist. He carried the wound of an old love the girl he loved had left him for someone else. From that day on, wherever he went, Haru talked about his pain. He often said, "I didn't deserve to be treated that way." That sentence became the coat he wore for years, both to pity himself and to make sure he never forgot. One afternoon, while the Zen master was tending the garden behind the temple, Haru walked up, his eyes red. He said, "Master, I've tried to forget, but the resentment won't fade. Every time I think of that person, I feel pain. I feel it's unfair. How can I stop suffering, Master?" The Zen master didn't answer. He quietly walked over to the lotus pond and lifted up a withered leaf that was floating on the water. Drops of water fell onto his hand, catching the sunlight in tiny streaks of light. "Do you see this leaf?" he asked. "Yes, Master, I do." "It fell because it was time for it to fall. Do you think it resents the tree for letting it go?" Haru lowered his head, silent. The master continued, his voice as gentle as the wind. "The tree doesn't let go of the leaf because it hates it, but because it knows that if it holds on, the leaf will wither on the branch. The one who left you is the same. They may not have meant to hurt you. They simply left because their role in your lesson was complete." Haru was stunned, tears falling without a sound. He choked out, "But why do I still hurt, Master?" The Zen master placed the leaf back onto the water, letting it drift away with the breeze. "Because you're still looking at that story with the eyes of someone who was hurt, not with the eyes of someone who was learning." From that day, Haru asked to stay at the temple for a while. He spoke less. Every morning he swept the yard, watered the flowers, and helped the master care for the garden. But what the Zen master taught him was not in scriptures. It was in the small tasks he did with awareness. When he swept the fallen leaves, he remembered the master's words. The tree doesn't let go because it hates the leaf. When he watered the lotus, he watched the withered leaves drifting and no longer felt sad. He simply saw a natural cycle of coming and going. At night, Haru sat by a wooden table and wrote about what he had been through. For the first time, he wasn't writing to complain, but to understand. He realized that, in his old relationship, he hadn't only loved the other person, he had also loved the feeling of being needed. And when she left, what he truly lost wasn't just her, but the image of himself he had clung to. Time passed. When the next lotus season came, the pond was full of fragrance again. Haru went to see the Zen master and bowed. "Master, I understand now. I don't need to know why she left anymore. I only know that because of her, I can see my own heart more clearly." The master smiled, his eyes gentle like the lotus pond in the early morning. "When you learn that you've already walked half the path to liberation." And from then on, Haru no longer talked about his old pain. He only talked about the lotuses, about the withered leaves that had fallen so the flowers could bloom. In Buddhist teaching, every relationship is conditioned by causes and conditions. Nothing happens by accident. People come together not only because of affection, but because of karmic ties, because there is still something not yet understood, not yet learned, not yet repaid, not yet released. The Buddha taught every encounter in this life is the continuation of seeds planted in the past. When we ask, why did they leave, our mind is facing outward. But when we ask, what have I learned? The mind begins to turn inward. And only in that inward turning can awakening begin to sprout. Those who leave us are not enemies, but teachers in another form. They help us see the things we didn't want to face: our insecurity, our pride, our fear of abandonment, our hunger for validation. That is why broken relationships are often the doorway to the deepest wisdom. If we look with a clinging mind, we see loss. If we look with an awakened mind, we see a lesson. And if we look with a compassionate mind, we see gratitude. When Haru understood that the one who left no longer held the power to hurt him, that she was simply part of the lesson on his path to awakening, his resentment faded. As resentment dissolved, light appeared in the empty space it left behind. Many people think that letting go means forgetting, but in truth, letting go means seeing clearly and still being able to smile. To see the person from the past and no longer tremble. To hear the old song and feel no stab in the heart. To remember the old story and feel full of gratitude. When we are awake enough to look back, every separation leaves behind a piece of wisdom. Sometimes it teaches us how to love without attachment, sometimes how to respect ourselves, sometimes how to walk through loneliness without rushing to fill it with someone new. In modern psychology, this is called growth after loss. Growth that comes after losing something. Many studies show that when a person truly reflects on themselves after a breakup, they don't just recover, they grow stronger. They listen better, love in healthier ways, and know their own boundaries more clearly. In Buddhism, this is called wisdom born from suffering. Suffering is the soil of awakening. No one finds light in their comfort zone, only in places that have already broken. If we can step back and ask, what is this trying to teach me? We have already begun the path of transformation. But if we only keep asking, why did they do that? We are still standing in the shadow of resentment. At night, when your heart is still restless over someone who is gone, try sitting quietly, closing your eyes and breathing slowly. As you inhale, silently say, I acknowledge this sadness. As you exhale silently, say, I will not judge it. Do this for a few minutes, and you will feel the sadness gradually dissolve like mist. Then place your hand over your heart and feel it beating. Ask yourself, what did this person teach me? Maybe they taught you how to love deeply, or taught you that love is not about holding on, but about understanding. Then smile, not because you are happy, but because you have understood. Understanding is the first step toward freedom. When the mind understands, the body feels lighter, and sleep comes naturally without struggle or exhaustion. As the Zen master once said, when you understand the lesson, you no longer need the teacher. And in the same way, when we understand the meaning of loss, pain has no reason to stay. In the end, when we are calm enough to look back, we realize that the one who left did not really abandon us. They simply returned us to ourselves. And when we come back to ourselves, we see that what we were searching for all along was never in anyone else, but in our own heart. Instead of asking, why did they leave? Ask, What have I learned about myself? Because that very question is the doorway to awakening. And once that door opens, we no longer need to look for peace in anyone else. Because peace has become our very breath, right here within us. Like the moon shining on the surface of a lake, silent, full, and never truly divided. Cutting someone off does not bring peace if the heart still holds resentment. Only when we leave with compassion, without anger, without blame, do we truly step onto the path of letting go. There are separations that seem to have ended, yet within us still flickers a small flame of resentment. We say we have let go, but when someone mentions their name, our heart still aches. We think we have cut all ties, yet at night the mind remains restless. Perhaps true letting go does not come from the act of leaving, but from how we leave. Long ago, in a small village at the foot of Mount Koya, there lived a potter named Etsu. He was known for his skill, patience, and passion for his craft. In his small riverside workshop, he spent his days shaping clay into graceful jars round smooth and full of the breath of the earth. One day, a young woman named Hana came to learn pottery. Her smile was gentle, like morning sunlight, her hands skillful, her eyes filled with quiet devotion. The two soon became close. They worked side by side, dreaming of opening a studio together to turn earth into art. Those were the happiest days of Etsu's life, simple like the scent of fresh clay and laughter carried by the wind. But one autumn morning, Hana was gone. No farewell, no note, no trace. Only unfinished pottery and a handkerchief she had left on the table. Etsu was devastated. In despair, he smashed every pot they had made, burned down his workshop, and swore never to touch clay again. If love can break this easily, he said, then nothing is worth keeping. Yet no matter how he tried to forget, Hana's presence was everywhere, in the blue smoke at dusk, in the wind passing through the eaves, in the very clay beneath his hands. The harder he tried to erase her, the clearer her image became. Finally, unable to bear it, Etsu climbed to a temple on the mountain, seeking guidance from a Zen master. Bowing deeply, he said with a trembling voice, "Master, I've destroyed everything that reminded me of her, yet my heart still won't rest. I hate her so much." The Zen master said nothing, only whispered, "Come with me." He led Etsu to a stream behind the temple where the water was so clear that every stone on the bottom could be seen. Handing him a cup, the master said, "Fill it." Etsu did. The water brimmed to the edge. "Now hold it tightly." Etsu gripped the cup. Within moments, the water spilled over, soaking his hands. "What do you see?" the master asked. "The water has all spilled out," Etsu replied. The master nodded. "Because you held it too tightly." Then he took another cup, set it gently in the stream, and let the water flow in naturally. "Do you see the difference?" Etsu was silent, but in that silence he understood. The master smiled. Letting go is not throwing away, it is setting down. If you leave with resentment, you are still holding on only with the other hand. Only when you leave with compassion and gratitude will you truly be free. Etsu stood by the stream for a long time. The water kept flowing clear and calm as if it had never carried a single tear. The next day, he returned to his ruined workshop. Among the ashes and broken pottery, he picked up each fragment, wiped away the dust, and began to mold again. This time, he did not create to sell, nor to remember, but to heal himself. The first jar he made bore fine cracks joined together with golden lacquer. Into it, he placed a wildflower and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me what it means to love and what it means to let go." From then on, Etsu became a renowned artist once more. People said his pottery was strange, both sorrowful and beautiful, carrying a deep sense of peace. No one knew that within each pattern, Etsu had sealed away the remnants of old hatred, trading them for a soul that had learned to smile at loss. In Buddhism, there is a simple but profound truth. No suffering comes from others, only from the mind that has not yet learned to let go. People think cutting ties is enough, but cutting without healing only hides the pain. Resentment is like a burning coal. Even if you throw it away, it still smolders inside. Only when you see that the root of resentment is the wish for justice do you realize no one can give you that justice except the compassion of your own heart. The Buddha taught hatred is never ended by hatred. Only love can end hatred. Letting go out of anger is escape. Letting go out of understanding is liberation. Letting go out of love is enlightenment. In modern psychology, this is called emotional closure. Studies show that when people truly forgive, not just in words, but in awareness, the areas of the brain linked to stress and self-defense visibly calm down. This means that forgiveness heals both body and mind. Forgiving does not mean agreeing with wrongdoing. It means freeing yourself from the negative energy that has imprisoned you. Because in this universe, no one can hurt us forever. Only we can keep reliving that hurt inside. Some people leave taking a piece of our youth, our memories, even our faith. But when we look back with wisdom, we see they took nothing. They simply returned us to ourselves. Letting go with resentment is like poisoning a well and then thirsting for water. Letting go with love is like cleaning the well, so the water becomes pure again. When you truly leave with gratitude, something miraculous happens. Your peace no longer depends on who was right or wrong. You see clearly that everyone acts according to their level of awareness in that moment. A scientist once said, "When the brain enters a state of empathy, anger dissolves faster than by any other means." That means forgiveness is not morality, it is wisdom. Because only wisdom can help us see that to stay angry is to burn ourselves in our own fire. The Buddha taught, "Let go of hatred as a firekeeper drops a burning log. Otherwise you will burn with it." Thus, ending a relationship without releasing resentment is like cutting a rope but keeping the hook in your heart. But when you leave with love, the rope dissolves on its own. Letting go with love is the final step of spiritual maturity. When you can walk away without anger or blame, only with gratitude, it is no longer separation, but liberation. And then you will realize something even deeper. Time does not heal wounds, awareness does. But time gives us space to look back with eyes of compassion, to see that no one ever truly hurt us. We were simply learning how to love more deeply, and to understand the wisdom of letting go. People often say, time heals everything. But does it really? If time truly has the power to erase pain, why do some people carry it for 10 years and still can't forget? Why do some wounds fade within a month while others last a lifetime, even when no one touches them again? Many years ago, at the foot of a mist-covered mountain, there was a small, peaceful village by a stream. In that village lived a woman named Maru. She once had a happy family until the day her husband died suddenly in an accident, leaving her alone with their young son. From that day on, Maru lived quietly like a shadow. She worked in the fields by day and lit her lamp to recite sutras at night. She did not cry, did not complain. Everyone in the village praised her strength and courage, but deep inside the pain still remained like a knife carved into her heart. It no longer bled, but it never healed. She often told herself, "If enough time passes, I will forget." And so, 10 years went by. Her son grew up, the old house grew moss, and one day while cleaning the attic, Maru found her husband's old shirt, the one she thought she had lost forever. The moment she touched it, she broke down in tears. The crying burst out like a stream long dammed, unstoppable and raw. The pain she thought time had buried came alive again, fresh, burning, as if 10 years had been only one long, unended breath. Unable to understand why she still could not move on, Maru went to a mountain temple, where an old Zen master lived, one known for his deep compassion and understanding of the human heart. When she met him, she told him everything. Each loss, each fear, each sleepless night. And finally, with trembling voice, she asked, "Master, it's been 10 years, and I still hurt. Isn't time supposed to heal?" The master sat in silence for a long while. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he poured her a cup of hot tea and said, "Hold this cup, but don't drink." Maru did as she was told. Soon, the heat spread through her palms until it became unbearable. She tried to endure it, then switched hands and finally set the cup down. "Master," she said softly, "it's too hot. I can't hold it." The master nodded, his voice calm. "If you don't let go, you'll get burned. But when you set it down, time doesn't need to interfere. It's the act of letting go that ends your pain." Maru was silent. Tears fell again, but this time there was clarity in them. The master continued, "Time only gives you distance to see that the wound exists, but awareness teaches you how to live with it without being consumed." Before she left, Maru asked quietly, "Master, what must I do to truly heal?" The master pointed toward the garden behind the temple where lotus flowers were blooming on the pond. "Look," he said gently, "the lotus does not choose to grow in clear water. It blooms because of the mud." He smiled, his voice as soft as wind across the lake. Healing is not about forgetting the mud. It's about learning to bloom within it. Maru bowed deeply in gratitude. As she walked down the mountain, the evening breeze rustled through the trees, and for the first time in 10 years, her heart felt light, as if a lotus had quietly opened inside her. The Buddha once said, "No one can step into the same river twice. The river changes, and so does the one who steps in." Time helps us flow, but it does not help us see. To see is to recognize the impermanent nature of all things. Time may fade what was old, but only wisdom can end suffering. In meditation, there is a term called vipassana. It means to see deeply, not to judge, but to truly see. When we look deeply into our pain, we discover that behind every loss lies a lesson about karma, about non-self, about the ever-flowing nature of life. If we only wait for time, we remain on this side of suffering. But when we see with wisdom, we cross to the other shore, the shore of understanding. Because understanding is the only medicine that transforms pain into insight. Modern psychology agrees. Studies on trauma show that people only begin to truly heal when they look back at their past with compassion, without self-blame, without resentment toward others. So time doesn't heal. It is awareness unfolding through time that allows the human heart to grow. Someone once asked, if time doesn't heal, then what is its purpose? Time is the soil where the seed of awareness can grow. If we only wait, the soil stays dry. But if we plant understanding water, it with mindfulness, tears, and compassion, one day the lotus of wisdom will bloom. Remember, pain doesn't disappear, it transforms. Those who have suffered deeply and can look back with gratitude will have gentler hearts. They understand others because they have walked through the night themselves. And that compassion is the true sign of one who has healed. The Buddha said the wise do not run from darkness, they light a lamp within it. If we use time to light the lamp of understanding, we no longer need to erase the past, because the past itself becomes light. Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth, the transformation that follows suffering. No one can escape pain, but those who observe it mindfully can turn it into awakening. Just as ashes were once fire, and once we understand fire, we no longer fear it. When you prepare to sleep, if your heart still carries an old pain, try this. Sit quietly. Inhale slowly, feeling the breath enter your body. Exhale and let your memories drift away like the wind. Then whisper to yourself, I am not erasing my memories. I am looking at them with kindness. If an image arises, a face, a voice, an old afternoon, do not push it away. Simply look at it and smile. Like a Zen master watching a dry leaf fall upon the lake, knowing it was once green and beautiful, but now it returns to the earth. Take another deep breath and tell yourself, I have grown enough that I no longer need time to heal me. I heal through understanding, and then you'll feel a strange lightness as if a door has opened, and the night breeze carries the faint scent of chrysanthemums through your heart. Sleep will come naturally, not because you've forgotten, but because you no longer need to resist memory. When you understand that time doesn't heal wounds, but only gives you space to look at them with compassion, you will no longer fear the passing days, because with each day that passes, you lose nothing. You only learn to see more clearly, to love more deeply, and to live more gently. And when you finally understand that true love never needs possession, you will no longer ask, What happens when I cut someone out of my life? Instead, you will quietly ask, what happens when I set my heart free? That question is the doorway to the next lesson in the journey of letting go. Have you ever realized that what makes us suffer in love isn't losing the other person, but losing the feeling of owning them? People often think love means keeping someone by our side, but in truth, the more we try to keep, the tighter we squeeze, and the tighter we squeeze, the more love suffocates. A gentle yet deep paradox: when we let go, true love finally has space to breathe. That morning, mist still covered the roof of the ancient temple, thin as a breath. Forest bird song echoed in the stillness like the earth whispering. Through the mist, a young woman approached, her cloak damp, her eyes red. Tears ran down her cheeks, yet her voice held restraint and dignity. "I've cut off all contact," she said. "I've blocked the number, deleted every photo, but I still hurt." She lifted her head and asked, choking up, "Why, Master? If letting go is liberation, why does my heart still feel heavy as stone?" The Zen master did not answer. He looked out at the temple courtyard, where the first light of day touched the dew on a lotus petal. A small butterfly flew in, settled lightly on the petal, then lifted off again. He pointed and smiled. "Do you see, the butterfly doesn't need the flower to hold it, and the flower doesn't need it to stay. Yet when they meet, both are beautiful." He paused, his voice lowering like wind passing through bamboo. Love doesn't have to remain to have meaning. To meet in a moment of freedom is already deep enough. Seeing the woman still silent, the master slowly told an old story. Long ago, in a small village by the forest, a young couple had lived together for many years. The husband loved his wife with all his heart, but the more he loved, the more he feared losing her. He began to ask where she went, when she would return, whom she spoke to. Each question became a strand of rope slowly tightening around the one he loved. The wife remained gentle, still smiled, but the light in her eyes grew dim. One morning, she left the village without a word. She left only a brief note. "I am not leaving because I don't love you. I am leaving so you can learn to love without binding." The husband collapsed. He stopped eating and sleeping, then went to the mountain temple to seek the master's guidance. When he met him, he wept like a child. "I've lost everything, Master. She was my whole life." The master looked at him and asked softly, "Before you met her, were you alive?" "Yes," he said, "but it had no meaning." "And after losing her, are you still breathing?" "Yes," he answered, "but I feel as if I've died." The master smiled gently. "Then you did not lose her. You only lost the meaning you placed upon her." He stood and led the man to the bamboo grove behind the temple. The bamboo stood tall and straight, green and swaying in the wind. "Do you see?" the master said. "These bamboo grow close together, but they do not touch. They rise to the sky, receive sun and rain together, but they are not bound to each other." He pointed. "If you tie them, a single strong wind can break them both." The husband stood silent, eyes following the swaying bamboo in the sunlight. For the first time, he understood that love is not holding on, but standing beside each other in freedom. As the wind passed, he raised his head to the sky. The sky seemed wider, the sound of the wind clearer, and he sensed that love had not truly disappeared. It was learning to change shape, to become gratitude. The Buddha taught craving as the rope that binds beings to suffering. It isn't loving that brings suffering. It's our clinging to the object of love, wanting that person to remain, as we wish always within our reach. But life is impermanent. The person of today is not the person of yesterday. When we love without accepting change, that love turns into fear. Zen calls this attachment a subtle delusion of the mind. We think we are loving, but we are actually possessing. We think we are caring, but we are actually controlling. Only when we see this clearly can love be free of suffering. True love in Buddhism is not based on possession, but on compassion and wisdom. Compassion is loving without demanding a return. Wisdom is knowing that everyone must walk their own path. When both are present, love is no longer a binding, but a blessing. Modern psychology says something similar. Those who truly know how to love allow the one they love to be themselves. When we stop trying to control, the relationship becomes healthier because natural energy can flow. Like in meditation, when we breathe without forcing it, the breath becomes natural and deep. But when we try to make it even, we grow tired. Love is the same when we let go. It returns to its natural state, light, warm, and free of fear. True love is not, I need someone to be happy, but I can be happy and share that happiness with someone. Many people seek love as a shelter, but true love is where we learn to let go. Letting go does not mean leaving or forgetting. Letting go is stopping our resistance to the truth that everything changes. It is accepting that the other has their own journey and we have ours. When we understand this, whether near or far, the heart remains at peace. The science of emotion shows that when people release control, the autonomic nervous system reduces stress, the heart rate steadies, and the breath deepens. The body grows lighter, and the mind opens. When the mind opens, loving energy returns, and we realize we don't need anyone to stay in order to love. The Buddha once said, "Love is not possession. It is the wish for another's happiness even without us." If you have gone through a separation, look back, not with resentment, but with gratitude, because that person helped you see the part you had not yet known how to love yourself. Each night before sleep, if you still carry someone's image in your heart, don't try to erase it. Just sit still, breathe in deeply, and exhale slowly. Imagine untying the cords around your heart layer by layer. Say quietly within, "I am not erasing this person from my life. I am simply returning freedom to both of us." Then imagine a stream of water flowing through your heart, washing away heaviness and leaving only a gentle light. In that moment, you will sense what the Buddha called a limitless heart, a heart no longer divided by loss or gain, by having or not having. Sleep will come gently like wind through bamboo leaves, not because you forgot them, but because you understood the nature of love freedom. When you understand that true love does not require possession, you no longer ask, "What happens when I cut someone out of my life?" You only ask, "What happens when I set my heart free?" For when the heart is freed, not only is love healed, life itself, becomes as light as breath. From then on, every connection, whether with people, places, or the past, becomes a journey of awakening. And along that path, you soon realize, freeing the heart is not the end of love, it is the beginning of peace. When we understand that true love does not require possession, the mind gently settles like a lake after wind. We no longer ask, what happens when I cut someone out of my life? But simply, what happens when I set my heart free? Because a freed heart no longer closes from fear nor clings from lack. It simply shines like a small lamp in the night, illuminating both itself and the one who has passed through. In that light, we realize true love never disappears. It only changes form. When we release someone with compassion, we do not lose them. We return them to freedom and return ourselves to our original peace. The Buddha taught that in every meeting, there is a deep karmic connection. Some come to teach us how to love, some come to teach us how to let go, and some pass by merely to awaken us from the trance of attachment. And sometimes distance itself is the noblest way to love a love no longer bound by craving or fear, but lifted into compassion. When you close your eyes tonight, let your mind rest. Allow memories to dissolve like morning mist in sunlight. Don't force forgetting and don't force remembering. Just breathe, be aware, and smile at the truth that everything is returning to its rightful place. Thank you for walking with us on this journey of understanding, letting go, and healing. If these stories and teachings touched your heart, please subscribe to Buddhism Seeds, like, share, and leave a comment below so we can spread the energy of awakening to more people. Wishing you a peaceful night, a deep sleep, and a heart light as a cloud, not because you have forgotten, but because you have understood.